Welcome to the GCI conference. Thank you. Please stand by. You will now be placed into conference. There are 18 participants in the conference.
Mr. Schulte, are you online? Mr. Jaime, are you online?
Yes, sir.
Mr. DeShock, are you online?
Yes.
Mr. Miller, are you online?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson, are you online?
I am.
Mr. Klinkhardt, are you online?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Craig, are you online?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Schulte, are you online? Okay, we'll wait a second, another half a minute or so, see if Mr. Schulte comes online. Again,
Mr.
to all
Chair?
those who are, Ms. Wilson.
I guess I should wait till the meeting's in order. I apologize for interrupting you.
Okay. Just again, to remind people that please mute your phone if you're not testifying before the board. It's easier for us to listen and have an appropriate discussion around these applicants. These are your fellow business owners, and they deserve the respect so that they get full consideration by the board. Mr. Schulte, are you online yet? Okay, well, I understand that it is 1 o'clock, and I want to reconvene the Marijuana Control Board on August 19th at 1 p.m. Mr. Schulte's not yet online, but soon will be. The other board members and staff are. Ms. Wilson, you wanted to have a comment before we get started?
I just wanted to let you know I've reached out to the Department of Revenue to get a status report on taxes, and if it comes in a written document, I will get that to the board.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Mr. Schulte, are you online yet? Okay, well, we will go ahead and proceed, and maybe by the time we get to the next applicant, Mr. Schulte will be online. So we are on to the new retail marijuana store applications. We are on tab 14, Fat Tops LLC in Kenai. Mr. Klinkhardt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This application is for a retail marijuana store on the Kenai Peninsula Borough by Fat Tops LLC, doing business as Fat Tops LLC. It was initiated back in November of 2019. Still pending local government, DEC response. The marshal's compliant. Their background check's complete. No objections received. No other public comments. I turn it over to you.
Okay, is there anybody online from Fat Tops LLC?
Jessica Smith is here on behalf of Fat Tops on behalf of Lance Wells' office representing Fat Tops, and Mr. Parker, the licensee, should also be on the line.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's see here. So, Mr. Parker, your first name's David, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So is there a motion from the board?
Move to approve with delegation.
Oh, Mr. Schulte's online.
Yeah, sorry, I was distracted there.
Okay. And the delegation would include the Kenai Peninsula Borough conditions?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions from the board to the applicants or the director?
This is Jaime. I have a quick question.
Yes, Mr. Jaime.
Fat Tops has a building over on the Sterling Highway. I can't find the address to this location. Is it the same place? Mr. Parker?
It is not.
Parker.
It is not the same place.
the address is 36380 Murray Lane, and that's spelled Murray. And the address for the second location is 23830 Spur Highway.
35975.
It's 35975 T9
Yeah,
Highway.
I'm sorry, I couldn't remember the number off the top of my
That was
head.
the license number.
Yeah, that was my license.
The other question I have is I see the location now on the map. There's actually a daycare, I believe, just south of that area. How far is that?
It was measured. I don't remember the exact footage, but it's a church daycare combination, and it is further than the 500 feet. Or it was. I don't remember the exact number, but we measured it for the original license, and there was we were safely distanced from the daycare.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other questions for the applicant or the director? Okay, not hearing any. I had one for the applicant. Looking at the MJ02, the premises diagram.
Yes.
You've got much more space than you show for your retail and I guess what you're calling back retail, which is where the individuals may purchase the product. But then you've got tons of storage and office space. Is it really that large of facility for just a small retail?
Originally, we intended to open a limited grow operation there, and it just became unnecessary, and we decided to put it off and perhaps use it for a different license establishment in the future. But for right now, it is going to be an unused portion of the building.
Okay, but the entire building will be a licensed premises, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so there won't be any other business going on in there?
There will not.
Okay, all right. Those were my questions. Any others from the board?
Not for me.
Okay, so on the motion...
Actually, I do have a question, and I don't know if Mr. Parker has the answer to this.
Sure,
just across the street, yes, sir. Just across the street, they opened up a new wrestling or gym that's focused around kids. Are you aware if that? I think it's called USA Wrestling or something of that nature. Is there daycare in that facility?
Not that I know of. The borough has not brought it up, and I've been in touch with them about the approval process that they're going through.
It's a fairly new building. It just opened up about a month and a half ago.
Yes, I do know about the building. I didn't actually pay close attention to what was going on there. But I do not believe it's a daycare. I think that it is more of an athletic facility.
Okay.
I haven't seen any advertisements for daycare there.
Any other questions, Mr. Jaime?
No, sir.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
Well, I would like to
Okay,
this is Jaime. I do have something. In delegation, if the borough can see what is in that business, if that's the borough's responsibility or the licensee's responsibility, but find out what is in that business, because I believe it's built around young adults or kids wrestling programs, and I believe there's other stuff inside that building.
Okay. I will leave that up to the borough and the staff, unless we hear of any complaints and or protests. Generally, if a marijuana license is approved and then another competing use comes in, like if a church went within 500 feet, if this is approved, the license would stay because there wasn't one prior to that. And so that will have to be up to the Kenai Peninsula Borough and staff when they do the inspection. But at the present time, I would not see that as a conflict. But it would be part of the delegation. It would be something that, if it's in delegated status, there could be local protests from the local government.
Through the chair, if I may, this is Ms. Smith.
Ms. Smith, just a minute. Ms. Smith, just a minute. There's some back conversation going on. Would people please mute your phone? We do not need to hear any conversation about any of your issues. We're dealing with the board and a licensee. So please mute your phones. Ms. Smith.
From Google, I have searched for and found the All-American Training Center in Soldotna, Soldotna's own year-round wrestling training facility and 24-hour fitness facility. It appears to be a multi-use facility. Clicking over to their website, gosh dang it, this was just open. It indicates that they have please reopen. Just click back to read the synopsis. You'll bear with me just 1 second here. It looks like this is the home to one of the wrestling clubs there during their competitive season, but it's also a venue for hosting, here we go, Alaska's premier wrestling and training facility and fitness center. All-American Training Center, home of the Soldotna Whalers Wrestling Club. They practice at AATC from February through April during their normal competitive season. Events, they can accommodate up to 300 people with banquets, wedding receptions, auctions, other special events. They also provide a 24-hour fitness on-demand, 24/7 fitness center, including virtual classes, accessories included for yoga and Pilates. They have cardio and weightlifting facilities, locker rooms, and accommodate programs for men, women, and children from ages 5 and up. So it looks like a really nice facility, but a multi-purpose facility, which is the home to a wrestling team. There's also a 24/7 gymnasium and visit the venue for other events. That's the background I found in 60 seconds or less.
Thank you. I would assume under COVID, they're probably not very active. Anyway, especially in Kenai. Anyway, any other questions, Mr. Jaime?
No, sir.
Okay. So on the motion to approve Fat Tops LLC with delegation,
Mr. Chair, this is Jane.
Ms. Sawyer.
I just want to have it for the record, to be clear. What is it that you are delegating to us, aside from the conditions from the Kenai Peninsula Borough and whether they protested based on what you guys just discussed or not? Is there anything else that you need us to look at?
Generally, none that I can identify. I think it has been our tradition to do it with delegation so that if there was things come up between the next meeting that staff can deal with, that's part of the delegation, unless we say anything specific. The one we did just before lunch, we talked about the PFD and the sink. But on this one, I don't see anything other than the local government response is pending, the DEC response is pending, so that would be part of the delegation.
Okay, but nothing to do with the distance from this, between this establishment, marijuana establishment, and this other new business of wrestling or whatever it is.
Not that I have heard as part of the motion.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, So we have a motion before us to approve with delegation, including the Kenai Peninsula Borough conditions for Fat Tots LLC 23810. Mr. DeShock.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Schulte.
Yes.
Mr. Jaime.
No.
Okay, and I am a yes, so that passes 4-1.
Thank you.
And you're welcome. Okay, let me turn the page here. Okay, we are on to tab 15, Trix, Trichs, LLC, license 24870 in Wasilla. Mr. Klinkart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an application for a retail marijuana store in the Mat-Su-Susitna Borough by Trix, LLC, doing business as Trix, LLC. The initial application was back in March of this year. We're still pending local government response, DEC response, and fire marshal. Background's complete, no objections, no other public comments. I turn it back to you.
Okay, is there anybody online from Trix, LLC?
Jonathan Guest.
And Greg Miller here.
Okay.
Jessica said I'm still here. I helped a lot, but mostly this is these guys, so I'll let you run with it.
Okay.
And that's trikes, as in trichome.
Okay, trichomes. Okay, I got that. Always tricky pronouncing anything. Is there a motion from the board?
Move to approve the delegation.
Second.
Is there a second? There is a second. Okay, is there any questions of the applicants from the board? Okay, hearing none, I have several. The diagrams on the, talks about a ground floor and a second floor. And the coding says the restricted access is orange and the licensed but not restricted is the blue. So the question I have of the applicants are, you have licensed but not restricted access on both the ground floor and the upper floor, and the second floor. Can you explain how you're going to deal with security? Where is the entrance? Where is your point of sale? None of that is very clear in the diagrams that I see. Can you walk me through that, please?
So this is Jonathan Guest. What we have right there is when you walk in through the front door, to the right is the sales counter, where you see the red becomes restricted access, where we'll be keeping our stock. The access upstairs is notated as so to allow bathroom use for customers, but there is a door there that can remain locked upon the request of a customer that needed to use the restroom.
So you mean there is a locked door downstairs that you could unlock if somebody had to use the restroom?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The other part is, I believe in the MJ02 or one of the documents, you talked about counters and swing doors. And I see on the ground floor, as a person comes in through the entrance, there is a little, I guess, an arrow that looks like a door and a counter. So that's a swing door where your point of sale would be behind in the restricted access area?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are there any other questions? And then in the other part, you're just using part of the building. Is there another part of the building behind there when you look at the photograph, you have the purple outline is just about a third of that building. What is in the other part of that building?
That space currently is vacant.
But you don't have any access to that. That's not part of this application.
That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions from the board members?
Yeah, I have one, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Schulte.
Some of your points brought this to my attention. So looking at the ground floor plan, over by the stairs, there's two squares that are shaded red.
Just a second, Mr. Schulte. There's somebody having an argument or something. Would you please mute your phones? I don't know who has their phone on in a workshop, but please mute your phone. Mr. Schulte, I am going to, I guess they finally heard us. So okay. Mr. Schulte, if you could ask your question again.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so on the first floor plan over by the stairs, there's two red shaded rectangles that I assume, because they're shaded red, are restricted access. What are those? Are those like locked display cabinets or something?
That's correct, yep. The only access to those cabinets are from behind the counter.
Okay, maybe I'm reading this wrong then. Where is the counter relative to the stairs?
So the stairs would, if you were behind the counter facing the front door, you would be facing the door to the stairs.
I believe what he's asking is, if you look at the diagram on the ground floor, you show two doors into the building. They're both on the up and the down part of the long wall, 40 foot. Then there's a set of stairs that say up, and then there are two orange boxes that are restricted access area, and I believe he was asking what those were. Those are not behind the counter.
Correct. I apologize. Those are just cabinets. Those are not intended for product or restricted product inside of those.
Okay, Mr.
So those are freestanding cabinets. So the counter is to the left, right? The counter backs up against the office/security room?
Yes,
correct?
Sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think I understand that. I mean, I guess if it were a locked cabinet, that would be okay too. I just wanted to make sure I understood what it was you were showing there. Not sure that
they are locked cabinets. They're locked glass. We don't intend to have product in there. I'm not sure how it got labeled that way.
I mean, clearly, I'm sure the enforcement guys will bring this up with you, but you're going to have some pretty good camera coverage upstairs so that somebody going to the restroom doesn't have ready access to your secure storage area, because they can just go up there and have,
Absolutely.
Presumably they'd be unattended up there. What is the rest of that floor used for upstairs? Is that just open?
Yep, it's just an area that was open and has been there that was the way the building was built.
Okay. And I'm just looking here again. Sorry, I want to look back at the this is in what community?
Matsuboro?
Wasilla.
Okay, so you're going to deal with the fire marshal. I'm just kind of wondering if so the rest of the building is currently unoccupied, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so you don't know what use that's going to be.
I do not believe it has an intended use at this point.
Okay. Okay. You may have already had this discussion with the fire marshal, but if you got retail on one side of the building and some sort of industrial function on the other side, you may end up having to have a firewall between the two. Just, not that it's going to make a difference in... Have you guys had that discussion with them?
Greg could answer that question better. He's been in contact with the fire marshal.
Yes, this is Greg Miller. We do have plan review approval from the fire marshal out here in the valley, plan review 2020-140. And so we have permission to go ahead with any kind of remodel. But when this building was built in 2000, that was 5/8 sheetrock that was put in there as a precautionary fire deal. But we'll be going over all that stuff with the fire marshal for sure.
Okay.
We occupy.
Yeah, I would suggest it because you might back yourselves into a corner where you've got an occupancy separation and you don't have a wall adequate for that. But that's kind of that's a separate issue. So I have no further questions.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Okay, so on the motion to approve license 24870, Trikes LLC for retail store in Wasilla, Mr. DeShock.
Yes.
Mr. Jaime.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Schulte.
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that motion passes. Thank you very much, Mr. Guest and Mr. Miller. We are on to tab 16, Alaskan Coffee Pot. Mr. Klinkart.
This is an application for retail marijuana store in the city and borough of Juneau by Alaskan Coffee Pot LLC, doing business as Alaskan Coffee Pot. Original application was in April of this year. A local government response is pending. DEC is pending. Fire marshal is deferred. Background is complete. No objections as of 8/6. Staff issues for the board to consider. Under Form MJ02 premises diagram, diagram 5A shows a business unit. Let's see, where is it? Oh, Chase Alaska Cooking School that is adjacent. Okay, there's a note here. That is adjacent to the proposed license. 3AAC 3061010 discusses license restrictions to include proximity of schools, but the types of schools are not specified. I will leave it up for anybody else that has any more additional information about that school.
Okay. Is there anybody online from Alaskan Coffee Pot?
Yes, Joe Markey.
And Jessica Smith here, also with Mr. Wells' office, representing Alaskan Coffee Pot.
Okay. As for your question, Mr. Klinkart, since this is my community, the Shea Cooking School is usually an adult cooking school. They have intermittent classes, mostly for adults. We've had this issue come up in here and other places for driving schools, those kinds of things. And even though they may have some incidental under 21 use, they're not usually defined as schools under the school system. And so I drove out there the other day because the portion of the building they're going to use used to be a scuba diving where I took my scuba certification. And there was some daycare out there, but there isn't anymore. So I just wanted to make sure of that. So I don't think the school is an issue unless any other board member would have that, but just from local knowledge, that's what I can tell you.
This is Joe, if I could speak up just for a second. The cooking school is actually no longer in business, and we've acquired that for future expansion. So I have that under contract now to lease out that building when they remove their belongings.
Okay. All right.
So answers that question.
All right. It does. Is there a motion from the board?
Move to approve with delegation. Delegation to include local government response and DEC response.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions of the applicant from the board?
Through the chair.
Mr. Miller.
So I have looked at this diagram and read it several times, and I would just like for them to talk through how the customer is going to come in, how they're going to be served, and
Sure.
Thank you.
So basically...
Mr. Markey.
Oh, go ahead.
No, Mr. Markey, please.
Oh, so when you walk in the door, there's a check-in counter. Somebody will be there checking IDs and whatnot. Immediately after that, you'll be in the waiting room. Behind the pony wall that you see there on the diagram is where the coffee kiosk will be, so we can serve coffee to people that are waiting. Off to the side room, you'll enter through the door that's open there, and that's where the marijuana products will be displayed and essentially sold from that area and or the coffee area. So we'll have two point of sales basically. The whole building will be licensed as the dispensary, so everything will be restricted. No customers will be able to enter without showing ID at the door. So, yeah, basically you walk in, waiting room, get a cup of coffee if you wanted to, and then off to the side there we have the marijuana room.
Mr. Miller.
So there is a point of sale area in the room to the right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so but it's not identified on the drawing. That's okay. That helps.
It should be, but if it's not, I can update that for sure.
And then you said you can purchase marijuana and coffee at the one counter. So if a customer's in the marijuana room, I'll call it, I guess,
sure.
The showroom, they say, I want this, this, and this. An employee will have to take it out of that room over into behind the other counter?
No, sir. So basically, the way that we did it, we made it to where you can go into the marijuana room and look at the actual product, pick out the products there, and buy them there. If you already knew what you wanted and you were, just in a rush and wanted to come in, grab, some product or whatever and a cup of coffee, you could just walk up straight to the counter and say, I would take XYZ, thank you, and leave. So you don't have to go in the marijuana room in order to see what's on display. We intend on having all the same products all the time from a grow that I helped establish down in Port Alexander. So basically, once our customer base is here and they know what we have, they can come in, get their products, and immediately leave. Or you could go into the display room and look at, whatever you wanted to look at, such as product to, visually see or whatever.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, I would like to add to the delegation on the diagram that Mr. Miller questioned. In the area that shows the various chairs and tables, it says marijuana is sold at this counter and points to the counter in front of the commercial kitchen. There is no such counter on the right-hand side in what is being called the marijuana room, even though it shows some other doors. So part of the delegation needs to be that diagram needs to be much more clear about where the IDs are checked, because it doesn't look like there's an outside, and where the marijuana can be sold from. Since in the MJ01, section 2.1, I will quote, marijuana is not available for purchase on the coffee shop side, and that is not what your diagram shows. So as part of the delegation, that needs to be cleared up.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll do that.
Are there any other questions from the board?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Schulte.
Yes, not to beat a dead horse, but I was kind of puzzling through that same question earlier, and I guess I want to clarify: are there in fact two locations that you can go to buy cannabis products? You can go into the marijuana room to the right,
yes,
or you can go to the
And
Okay,
then as far as the coffee section goes, that's also a separate area. So you could walk up and purchase, because the coffee will be a separate POS system. So you could go up to the left side of the counter, and that's where you would purchase your coffee if you so happen to only want a cup of coffee. Or the right side would have the POS system for marijuana products completely separate from the coffee sales.
So the counter that Mr. Jones was referencing initially, where it said there's a little arrow that points to it, the 12-foot wide counter, says marijuana is sold at this counter. There is marijuana sold there, or there is not?
There is marijuana sold there. Like I said, there will be a station on the right-hand side. That would be the POS system for marijuana. And then on the left-hand side would be the small area for the kiosk and or coffee, if that's what you want to call it.
LRU what?
Okay.
Hey, Joe, do you have this diagram in front of you, Mr. Markey? Joe?
I actually do not.
Okay. Looking at the diagram, and just for some clarification here, and to hopefully take this dead horse and be done with it for a minute, it appears as though I know that there were several diagram updates and several diagram changes in the last couple of revisions, and it appears as though the dollar sign icon indicator for the point of sale never reappeared in the right side. That is the area that you call the marijuana room, and that the board is requesting a delegation to ensure congruity between your MJ01 and the most recent of your diagrams, which needs to have the inclusion of the additional point of sale.
Okay.
And we have no problem taking care of that.
Is this built out already? Like, are all the walls and doors in place now, as indicated on this diagram?
Yes, it is. It was actually built out prior to us taking it over. I don't necessarily want to say who had it prior to us, but it was built out for this purpose prior to us acquiring it, and they lost the lease. We came in, got the lease, and basically just did some painting and freshened things up.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Well, so just kind of to wrap up this whole discussion, I think I understand now that you're going to have 2 points of sale systems at that counter. The one on the right.
Yes, and I apologize if the new diagram didn't make it in. Like Jessica said, we had a couple different changes because it was an existing or was going to be an existing dispensary. At one time, we had a plan, and then coming in, we were like, oh, we got to change this and change that. So I thought that we had got all the new updated stuff to you guys, but if we have not, my apologies for that.
Okay, no worries. I was just going to suggest that right-hand point of sale station, that door is going to swing open and smack him in the back of the head every time it opens. So you might find yourself having to rehinge that door.
The door actually is hinged to open out now.
Oh, okay. Well, then, problem solved. I don't have any further questions.
Okay. I won't disagree too much with what Mr. Markey said, but when I was out there yesterday, and the door was open, there was a trailer backed up in there, construction people working. What I could see through the door, it did not look like it was very well built out. It looked like there was an awful lot of construction material on the floor. The other question I have is not necessarily related to your application, but we have a lot of applications that are on delegated status or whatever for years. It is my understanding that you, and one of the reasons why there's no government response, local government response to the application, is that you have not applied yet for your conditional use permit from the city. I believe you were in there in January or February, but a conditional use permit requires a pre-application conference, which has never been scheduled. There is no paperwork for the local conditional use permit, and knowing my city and knowing that that's a 2 to 3 month process, where are you in your application for a conditional use permit within the city borough of Juneau, and your plans to get the appropriate business license in Juneau once you have your conditional use permit?
So we're working off of that, I'm not exactly sure where that fell through the cracks at. We've had the DEC approval already, pre-approval or whatever. We've been working with everybody here in Juneau. I've dealt with the fire marshal. I've had phone calls with him. I did talk with John down at the city prior to him retiring and let him know what we were doing here. So as far as I knew, we were above board and ready to go. I know.
No, sir, you are not. You are not.
Yeah. You're bringing that.
You are several months away, if not further, once you've done your pre-conference hearing. So I just want to be clear that while the board may approve your license today with delegation,
Sure.
You are months away from meeting any local requirements, and I'm not sure why your fire marshal and or DEC, I can understand them doing that, but without your conditional use permit with the city, you're not going anywhere. So with that, is there any other questions from the board? Okay, so on the motion to approve license 25190 Alaska Coffee Pot Retail Store with delegation, Mr. DeShott.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Jaime.
Yes.
Mr. Schulte.
Yes.
And I'm a no. That passes on 4-1. We will move on, but just a reminder that you are a long ways away from getting your permits from the city. And don't forget that you cannot open your door unless you have those.
Oh, of course.
Mr. Schulte, do you have is that you?
No, this was Jaime.
Oh, Mr. Jaime.
I just want to let you know, sir, I need to take a short break, 10 to 15 minutes. I'll call back in as soon as I can.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Wilson, we can move on with just 4, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Jaime.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so we are on to tab 18 or 17, license 25324, Alaskan grown cannabis. Retail store in Dillingham. Mr. Klinkert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an application for retail marijuana store in the city of Dillingham by Rural Retail Management, doing business as Alaskan grown cannabis. The application was initiated back in May of this year. The objection period doesn't end until September 9th. We've got some pending things. Background is complete. No objections as of the printing of this. And just to note that there were some corrections to the address. The proper and corrected address has been entered as 213 West A Street on 8/10 of 2020. Back to you, sir.
Is there anybody online from Alaska grown cannabis?
Attorney, and I also have both the licensees, Jason Evans and Kala Peacock, are also on the line. So, Jason Evans, could you say hi to the board real quick?
Thank you, Jana. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Jason Evans. I'm on the line. I'm also here with my brother-in-law, Kala Peacock, online as well.
Okay. Okay, Jana, you were still on mute when you first introduced yourself. All I heard was attorney, so I assume you introduced yourself, correct?
So I did. I'm going to take my headphones off because that's probably the issue. But Jana Waldstein, attorney.
Okay. Is there a motion from the board?
Move to approve. Yes, with delegation. That's what I was pausing over.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, so this is moved and seconded. Is there questions from the board to the applicant or to the director?
Yeah, through the chair, this is Casey.
Mr. DeShock.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the applicant the condition of the building that they're looking at right now, whether or not that the building needs substantial renovation or whether it's freestanding now, it meets code and it's ready to go today or not.
Mr. Chair, this is Jason Evans. I could answer that.
Yes, Jason.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this building was constructed in 2011, so it's approximately 9 years old. It's in very good condition. We're waiting for final fire marshal approval to just do some minor cosmetic repairs, or not repairs, but remodel. And so it's going to take some pretty light duty work, but we're just waiting for our permit to get that started.
And the applicants are not located in Dillingham themselves, but will be commuting for the operation of the business?
Mr. Evans?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have identified a local resident who's actually a longtime friend of ours that would most likely be the retail manager. So we would have local staff. You know, I live in Anchorage, so does Kala. So we wouldn't necessarily be commuting to manage this facility. We would have local staff that we've known for a long period of time that we would train with our systems to run the store locally.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of the applicants?
Through the chair.
Mr. Miller.
So on MJ00, it shows that, you know, you have a handful of licenses here, more than a handful, a big hand. How many of those licenses are operational?
Jason and College, do you want me to take this one?
Go ahead, Jana, and I'll fill in as needed.
Okay, awesome. So Kala by himself has one operational license as a retail in Kotzebue, and then Kala is 50% owner of a retail in Nome, and then Jason, Kala are minority owners in 3 Anchorage licenses, a manufacturing, a cultivation, and a retail. And then the rest of the licenses are not, they're not moving forward, and we're still evaluating whether to move them forward. And then, Jason, if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, thank you, Jenna. I think you covered it pretty well, but we do have several partnerships where we might be minority owners or operating managers, so I think you summarized that correctly, but I'm happy to answer any additional questions.
I left out Utiavik. The retail in Utiavik. That's blue.
Mr. Miller.
That's okay. That's fine. Thanks.
I question that as well, but I guess time will tell. I haven't seen any problems with any of the current operating licenses or heard the names, so I assumed that everything was working out fairly well. Any other questions of the applicant? Okay, not hearing any other questions of the applicants. We have a motion to approve with delegation license 25324 Alaska Grown Cannabis. Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Jaime. Not back online. Mr. Schulte.
Yes.
Mr. DeShock.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. And Mr. Jaime absent. Okay, so that concludes the retail licenses. So we're on to tab 18, which is Canabaska, and this is a ownership transfer. And before I go ahead, okay, well, we'll just move ahead here. Okay, so this is a for Canabaska license 10236. Mr. Klinkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an application to transfer the ownership of a retail marijuana store in the municipality of Anchorage from Alaska Sense LLC to SEMA Enterprises, doing business as Canabaska. We received it in June. The objection period has not ended, and we're pending responses on several things. Background is complete. No objections as of 8/3. Back to you, sir.
Is there anybody online from Canabaska?
Yes, Jana Waldstein, attorney for Sminar Warden, and Smarty is on the phone as well. And if the chair would just allow me a minute to explain this transfer.
Wait till we get a motion, and then I'll come back to you, please.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, so is there a motion on the board?
Well, I was going to wait for the explanation, but I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve transfer license number 10236 with delegation.
Second. Okay, there is a second. Ms. Welsing.
Okay, so thank you very much. Through the chair, the reason for this transfer is it's actually not changing who owns the license. Smarty is still the single member of SEMA Enterprises LLC. What this is doing is it's removing the retail from the Alaska Sense LLC, because when she was originally set up, she had all of her licenses under one company, and the state of Alaska, even though this is an LLC, she has it taxed as a C Corp, and the state of Alaska imposes an additional income tax on corporations that usually businesses can get exempt from, but currently the Department of Revenue is taking the position that marijuana is an agricultural product, a farming, and that's one of the companies, types of businesses that you can't actually get a C Corp small business exemption from. So we're trying to peel out the retail. In next agenda, you'll see the downtown retail transfer. Peel out the retail away from the cultivation entity so that she doesn't have that negative third layer of taxation on her retail income. So that's the only reason for this transfer.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board to the applicant or the director?
Now, Mr. Chairman, this is Jaime. I just want to let you know I'm back in conference. I'll abstain from voting on whichever.
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
Thank you. Okay, so we have Mr. Jaime has rejoined us. He will abstain from this vote because he hasn't heard the discussion. So we do not have any questions from the board. So there's a motion to approve with delegation the ownership transfer for license 10236 Canabaska. Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Schulte.
Yes.
Mr. DeShock.
Yes.
And I'm a yes, and Mr. Jaime is abstaining. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to tab 19. So this is K Beach Reef, license 11649, standard marijuana cultivation. Mr. Klinkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an application to transfer the ownership of a standard marijuana cultivation facility in the Kenai Peninsula Borough from Ryan K. Hall to doing business as K Beach Reef to KBRLC DBA doing business as K Beach Reef. Entered in March. Looks like there is no objection from local government. DEC did not need any response because there are no changes to the operating plan or premises. Everything else is compliant all the way through June. no creditors, background check is complete, and no objections. I hand it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, is there anybody online from K Beach Reef?
Yes, sir. This is Ryan Hall, owner of K Beach Reef.
Okay, Mr. Hall, is there a motion from the board?
Yeah, move to approve the license, transfer license 11649.
Second.
Okay. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chair, this is Jane.
Ms. Sawyer.
Can you please put on the record that you are approving this with the KPV conditions, if that's what you're doing?
Sure. I have a question about that later on in this process, but we will make sure we mention that this motion is approval with the conditions from the Kenai Peninsula Borough.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any questions? Okay, hearing no questions on the motion to approve the ownership transfer for license 11649, Mr. DeShock.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Jaime.
Yes.
Mr. Schulte.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. We will move on to license 15916, KB Reef, tab 20, K Beach Reef. Again, another ownership transfer. Mr. Klinkart.
Mr. Chair, it's an application to transfer ownership of a retail marijuana store in the Kenai Peninsula Borough from Ryan K. Hall, doing business as K Beach Reef, to KBR Retail LLC, doing business as K Beach Reef. Started in March, same in July, no objection with conditions pursuant to local government. DEC was complete, compliant through Fire Marshal, DOL, WCES, DOR response compliant, background check is complete, no objections at this time. Turn it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Hall, are you still online?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I am.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Move to approve transfer license number 15916 with conditions.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to approve the license. Is there any questions? Okay, no questions. Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Jaime.
Yes.
Mr. DeShock.
Yes.
Mr. Schulte.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So thank you, Mr. Hall. That was pretty easy.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome. It is almost 2 o'clock, and we have a new on-site consumption. I'd like to do this, and then we will take a break. And so this is tab 21, license number 20827, Ms. Linkart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an application for an on-site consumption endorsement in the City of Fairbanks by FSE Inc., doing business as Good Titrations. Just note the objection period does not end until September 5th. Pending local government response, we're pending DEC food safety response. Fire Marshal has deferred. No objections as of 8/6. And I turn it back to you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Is there anybody online from Good Titrations?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Daniel Dean, attorney for Good Titrations, and I have Brandon Emmett also on the phone.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board.
Mr. Emmett, how are you?
I am well.
Good. Is there a motion?
Move to approve On-site consumption endorsement for license number 20827 with delegation.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Yes, I heard the second. Before we go into discussion, I have a question for our attorney. So I want to preface this by saying that we had a case in Fairbanks that went to Office of Hearing Appeals, and that was a decision that we had ratified, and we signed off on, basically giving, absence of any correcter term, a court ruling on what is a freestanding facility. And it was my reading of the hearing decision that basically said that having a requirement that the building housing the store be freestanding, even if the consumption is to take place outdoors. It's probably the wrong one. Anyway, as I read this decision, it seemed to me that this is a building that has other businesses in it. And I wanted to have the attorney answer a question of whether or not the retail portion needed to be freestanding from any other businesses or any other function within the building, because it was my reading that it may not be. So Ms. Wilson, could you sort of, to the board, address that issue?
Yeah. Mr. Chair, I'm looking at the premises diagram, but in your summary of Fairbanks Cut is accurate. I'm sorry, I can give the name because it's public. In addition to the licensee, there was, I believe, an office management lessor or entity in the same building. I did a pretty deep dive into the legislative history of what was intended by freestanding and including the discussions of marijuana facilities. And the legislative history really seemed to establish that by freestanding, they meant that the licensee was the sole entity in the building. Now, I do want and that was the argument adopted. That was the argument the Department of Law made based upon the legislative history in support of your prior decision. And that was the same decision that the administrative law judge reached in that case. Following that hearing, I was listening, of course, when you were improving on-site consumption to applications or endorsements. And in, I think, one case, there was a situation where a retail establishment shared the same building with its own, I'm going to say, manufacturing facility, but it was completely the same owners. And you will note that in the definition of freestanding in your regs, which you have approved that are still in the final stages of Department of Law review, the definition of freestanding was amended to permit that under the understanding that it was keeping with the legislative history and that these are really, although it's two licenses, they're really one entity, all involved in the same business. So I'm looking at the premises diagram, and I guess I'm looking to see what other businesses are in this establishment. I see a cultivating license, I see a manufacturing license, which I think would get us under the new definition, but am I missing a non-marijuana related business?
I do not believe you are. I just wanted to make sure, because as I had read that without your other explanation, that was my concern. I wanted to get that on the record here before we moved forward. But
and
no,
that was my
don't...
concern, after the board approved the one. So I wanted to try to align your position, and I think it's supportable. The regulations are not yet final, sir, but I expect that to be occurring shortly.
Mr. Chair,
so
this is Jane.
Ms. Sawyer.
I don't want to undermine anything Ms. Wilson just said because I love her so much. But the amendment to licensed premises is actually on overlapping premises, the project that you're going to have later tomorrow.
No, it's on on-site. I addressed it specifically in on-site. I promise you.
You did? Oh, okay. That's fine then, because I have it on the overlapping premises too. Then.
Okay.
Oh, never mind.
I
No,
knew it was a
you
concern.
are right. You're right. Never mind. That's licensed premises, not Yeah. Sorry about that.
We worked together on a lot of things, but it was specific to that very issue.
Okay,
All right.
good. I'm sorry.
Thank you. That helps me and will limit my otherwise discussion. Are there any questions of the applicant from board?
No?
Okay.
What's the timing?
Mr. Emmett or Ms. Wilson, the question from the board member Schulte?
Yeah, I'm sorry, that was kind of random. I just threw that out there. I was just kind of wondering when they're planning on opening.
Oh,
Yeah,
Brian, I'll let you go for that.
Yeah, good afternoon, Mr. Schulte. Our plan is to open sometime in October.
Oh, okay, cool. I have no further questions because we talked about this quite a bit before.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman, I have a general question for, I guess, enforcement.
Mr. Jaime.
And I apologize for not referencing this in the regulations, but when it comes to alcohol, you know, all the bartenders have to go to, I believe it's, at least when I used to be a bartender, it was called TEMS, Techniques in Alcohol Management. Are retail or on-site consumption businesses required to take a course such as a TAMS course?
They are, Mr. Jaime. All persons that work or hold a license have to have a marijuana's handler's card. As part of that education course, there is the part about recognizing an impaired person, understanding the rules for ID checks, and understanding the issues revolved around observing the consumption to make sure that they're only consuming products that are purchased on that facility, not bringing in more stuff. So that is all part of the marijuana handler's card, and all employees and all licensees are required to have that prior to employment.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other questions? Okay. I have a couple, Mr. Emmett. I think in the previous iteration of this, while we weren't considering the on-site at that time, there was one entrance into the on-site consumption area, and that was from close to the entrance into the retail. So you enter the building, you can go left into the retail or into the consumption area. This diagram shows an additional on-site entry in which a person does not have to enter into the retail side. They can enter directly into the on-site side. I believe that was partly because you are going to sell in the on-site area product specifically for on-site consumption. So I think we used to perceive of this as you go to retail, you purchase a product, maybe you go to the on-site if we approve it, and you consume either that product or part of that product. But you are going to serve and sell on the on-site side only product for consumption, not for retail or to take home, and that's why you can enter into the on-site side through a separate entrance. Am I reading this diagram and reading your plans correctly?
Yes, sir, you are correct.
Okay. I guess I have some philosophical problems with that, but I just want to make sure that the board is aware that because normally when I was looking at all of this and when, we've had you and I had this discussion over many, many years about on-site consumption, it was sort of like you go into the retail, get all your ID checked, everybody's sure, then you move to an on-site if we approve that, and having a separate entrance into the on-site concerns me a little bit. Any other questions from the board? Okay, hearing none. We have a motion to approve the endorsement of an on-site consumption to retail licensee 20827 Good Titrations. I will go to Mr. DeShock.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Schulte.
Yes.
Mr. Jaime.
No.
And I'm a no. That passes on 3-2. Good luck to
Thank you.
Mr. Emmett. Okay, so it is 10 minutes after
Thank you.
2. I thought we were going to spend more time on that than we did, but let's go ahead and take a break before we get into the license renewal applications. So I'm showing 2:09. Let's come back at 2:20. You can just stay on the line, put yourself on mute. We'll be back at 2:20. Thank you. Okay, this is Lauren. I showed 219, so if we're going to start at 220, just wanted to verify. Mr. Miller, are you back online?
I am.
Mr. Schulte, are you back online? Mr. Deshak, are you back online?
I am.
Mr. Jaime, you back online?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Schulte, are you back online? Ms. Wilson, are you back online?
I am.
Mr. Klinkart, you back online?
Yes, sir, I am.
Ms. Craig, are you back online?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay, Mr. Schulte, are you back online? Mr. Schulte, are you back online? Mr. Schulte, are you back online?
I am.
Okay. All right. So I showed 220. The Marijuana Control Board meeting will call back to order. We are on license renewal applications. We are at tab 22. I have a question of, I guess, Mr. Klinkart, and then a question of the attorney, or maybe to both at the same time. Tabs 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27 are all renewals, and basically we're being asked to review these because we need to put the conditions pursuant to the Kenai Peninsula Borough on the renewal application. And my question is this something we can delegate to the director so that, barring any other reason, we have asked renewals to come before the board, which is notice of violations, that any renewal of a business that has the Kenai Peninsula Borough conditions, that they simply, we delegate to the director to add those on to the renewal license. I find this to be sort of time-consuming and totally unnecessary, but I would ask Mr. Klinkart or Ms. Wilson if they could answer that question.
Mr. Chair, this is Jane.
Wilson? Ms. Sawyer.
Okay, I hope I can articulate this good for you. But the reason why these are in front of you, and we didn't even let the licensees know that they were going to be in front of the board for this, but I think it's more of, for lack of a better term, formality, or I don't even know, anyway. So under 306.060B, it says that a local government may recommend that the board approve an application, in this case for a renewal of the license with conditions, and that the board will impose a condition a local government recommends unless the board finds the recommended condition is arbitrary, capricious, and unreasonable. So from the beginning of marijuana times, you, the board, have been approving...
Excuse me, Ms. Sawyer. There's somebody who's running machinery or something, and we're trying to hold a conference here. Could you please mute your phone?
Sorry, guy.
Please, thank you. Would appreciate if you'd mute your phone. Ms. Sawyer, continue, please.
Okay. So from the beginning of marijuana times, you, the board, has approved the Kenai Peninsula Borough's conditions, sort of in a blanket statement, which if Ms. Wilson says it's okay, then that's fine with us. But I believe we do need to bring them to you every time they renew for you to reimpose those conditions. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I know we didn't do this last year, and I'm sure we approved all of the Kenai ones last year. So, Ms. Wilson, you want to weigh in here?
I'm reading that same statutory section and also looking at your authority to delegate. Can you give me a little time?
Sure.
Answer. I don't know if you want to start.
I can tell you that the Kenai Peninsula Borough, 3 years ago maybe, sent us a letter that listed out the conditions that they wanted on all licenses within the borough. pursuant to this regulation. We are never presented that memo each time we consider a new application. We just simply say that this is with those conditions. I guess we are always assuming that those conditions have not changed since that letter of 3 years ago. And that's why I find it very difficult or sort of time consuming to go through the formality of doing that when I don't remember what those conditions are. I have not seen that letter for 3 years. And by putting that condition on a delegation, I'm assuming that the office always has that memo available so that the providers or the licensee knows what those conditions are and that they're given a copy of those conditions. So I'm assuming that was all just an administrative function. And I find it strange that this year we're being asked to redo that on applications when we haven't been in the past. So that's my major problem.
Yeah, I mean, looking generally at AS 1738-150, the final sentence, the board may delegate to the director any duty imposed by this chapter except its power to propose and adopt regulations. I think that could fall under, so long as you've delegated that duty and you're comfortable with that delegation, that could fall there. I'm
Okay.
looking, though, also at the language that Ms. Sawyer just read.
Okay. I know I've taken up time and I try not to do that as chair, but is there any comments from any other board members?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Schulte.
Mr. Schulte.
I tend to agree with you in principle. I mean, if we're just going to apply these same conditions to all the licensees, I mean, they seem fairly reasonable. I'd be open to the most efficient way of doing that.
I mean, obviously,
Okay, well,
if we ever hear from a borough that their conditions change, I think that's something you want to bring back to the board.
yes,
And
I
then
would
bring back
understand that.
to- Yeah.
So right
Board
now, I
will-
don't think they've changed in 3 years. And we didn't find them arbitrary and capricious 3 years ago, so I doubt we would find them arbitrary and capricious this year. So since this is on our agenda, I would entertain a motion to approve the license renewal for tabs 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. And if we do that, then maybe a motion to delegate this to the director.
I would make that motion with delegation to the director.
I think it has to be two motions, Mr. Schulte, but I will take the motion to approve
Okay.
tabs 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, and 27. Is there a
All
second?
right.
Second.
Okay, so moved and seconded. Is there any comments or questions from the board? Okay, on the motion to approve the renewal licenses for tabs 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, all with the Kenai Peninsula Borough conditions. Mr. Jaime?
Yes.
Mr. DeShock?
Yeah.
Mr. Schulte?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So is there a motion related to delegation?
Now I'm just confused.
This
is not our normal system.
No. I think the motion, Mr. Schulte, would be for the board to, by delegation, allow the director to approve a renewal application with the Kenai Peninsula Borough conditions that were established by the borough at the time of licensing on any renewals without coming back to the board.
Okay.
That may be long-winded, but I think that's what the motion should be.
So that was well stated because it helped me catch up with the conversation. I understand now where you're going. So this applies to future renewal applications. I would make that motion, just the way you said it.
and I will
Okay.
second it.
All right. So it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? And I will allow Ms. Craig to review the tape to make sure she gets my wording correct, because I doubt I could repeat myself. So on the motion, Mr. Schulte.
Yes.
Mr. Jaime.
Yes.
Mr. DeShock.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So we just took care of a whole bunch of tabs here real quick. Okay, so we are on to tab 28. And this is objections and public comments received for license renewal application license 17692, Mr. Happy Farms LLC, and this is on tab 28. Mr. Klinkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a renewal application for a limited marijuana cultivation facility within the Matanuska-Susitna Borough by Mr. Happy Farms LLC, doing business as Mr. Happy Farms LLC. No government protest. There have been some objections which are attached, and there's a public comment which was hopefully attached to a confidential folder that I hopefully had access to. No notice of violations that have been brought at this time, and no current questions for the board from staff. So I turn it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and who is online for Mr. Happy Farms LLC?
Jana Waldine, attorney for Mr. Happy Farms, and Matthew Shelton, the licensee, is also on the phone.
And also
Okay.
his contractor, Cammie Pebsworth.
Okay, Matthew, what's your last name?
Shelton, S-H-E-L-T-O-N.
Okay. Okay, and I believe Ms. Welsine also sent a document related to this. And I know I received it yesterday. I believe Ms. Craig sent it out to board members today. Have all the board members gotten that communication?
I got it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I think we're going to have to put a limit like some courts do. You know, your briefs have to be less than 5 pages or whatever. 38 pages was a little bit much.
It was a fascinating read, though.
And then there are objections. Is there anybody online who had filed an objection on Mr. Happy Farms?
Yes,
And you are?
I'm Sam Hanson.
Sam Hanson. Is there anybody else online? Okay. All right, so we have before us the renewal of Mr. Happy Farms. We have 3 objections in the notice. We have the lengthy response from the attorney for Mr. Happy Farms, and I believe Mr. Klinkhart said that we had 1 confidential comment related to Mr. Happy Farms. How does the board wish to proceed?
What do you mean there, Mr. Chairman?
Well, we can put a motion on the table to approve the renewal, and then the board can ask questions of either the objectors or of the applicant. We can ask questions before we do any motions. But I assume since this is a renewal, we need to deal with this today. There's a lot of material here to read and review, so I'm assuming that potentially if board members feel they have not had adequate time to consider this, we could table this till tomorrow, would be a third option. Those are the ones that were running across my mind. There may be others on the board that are better prepared to act or not, and so that's what I meant, Mr. Jaime, was it's up to the board at this point.
And Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir. I'd like to make a motion to deny the renewal application for Mr. Happy Farms and open it for discussion.
All right, to deny the renewal application. Is there a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. So we are now at discussion. Mr. Jaime, let's start with you.
Well, yeah, I read all these complaints and all the supporting documents for and against. And I remember when this came before the board the first time, the board had the same concerns about the distance from the school. So I think there's still valid concerns. I know there hasn't been any NOVs for Mr. Happy Farms, but a question for enforcement, have they responded out there and checked the order complaints?
Mr.
Chairman?
Mr. Holscher.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Through the chair, enforcement had received earlier complaints in the year, and the complaints kind of steadily wore down over time. But at the point where they were at their worst, we were going out to include immediately within an hour or less of when the complaint came in, I would send an investigator out, and I would have investigators go out to include myself, to go out on weekends and in evenings to see if there was any odor emitting from the residents as we have received complaints. And as you can see from the absence of the NOVs, at least when enforcement was there, responding to complaints and being proactive and seeing if we could see if there was an odor during the times where there was complaints, we were not able to detect any odor of marijuana. That's not to say there isn't or wasn't any odor of marijuana, but just by the way when enforcement responds or by random checks, we were not getting any odors of marijuana.
Okay, Mr. Jaime, any other questions?
The only other question I have is when it was originally approved for delegation, and I guess the Matson Borough did not object, there was a concern that there was no commercial business allowed in this subdivision. Do you know if that was checked by I think this is more an enforcement question, if that was verified through the borough?
Through the chair?
Mr. Holscher.
I do believe that with the Matsu Borough with limited cultivations, they only deal with standard cultivations, and their rules and their applicability to the rules, from my understanding with land use, only apply to standard cultivations, not limited. If there's somebody else on that can correct me and tell me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of, when we went down that road of land use, and if they were able to, if the Matsu Borough was able to do anything in regards to the odor complaints we were receiving or the distance requirements, they said only standard cultivations apply to their rules, not limited. So if anything happens with limited, it goes straight back to the state.
Through the chair, can I just add one more element to what Chief Holster just explained?
Ms. Wellstein.
It's have a less standard.
So Chief Holster is correct. And one other thing to add to that, though, is in the Matsu, they don't have zone districts except for special use districts, BUDs. So this isn't a SPUD. This is in a special use district. So, in the Matsu Borough's eyes, this is an appropriate property if we're talking about just the zoning. And also through the chair, I would like a chance as the licensee representative to present when the board deems it the correct time, but also before any vote takes place.
Well, that's up to the board. We have a motion before us, and we're basically asking questions. So, Mr. Jaime, do you have any further questions?
I don't. Like I said, I'm still concerned with the proximity to the school. In my interpretation of that regulation, it's illegal. So,
okay.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Schulte, I believe you had some questions.
Yeah, I do. I think I may have 3, possibly 4. So I guess I would, first of all, invite, if I believe there was somebody online who's objecting to this renewal, if they
yes, Ms.
feel
Sam
comfortable.
Hanson.
Okay, so if she feels comfortable doing so, perhaps she could just address her concerns for us to hear. I mean, we've read all the letters, but.
Ms. Hanson.
Yes, I'm here. I'd like to make one quick comment regarding the setback from the school before I make my comment. Currently, there are 2 community councils that present resolutions forward to the Mat-Su Borough. Assemblyman Summer is bringing it forward with the Planning Commission in September to have the Mat-Su Borough take over all limited cultivation facility decisions from AMCO so that there will not be a setback 60 feet from a school. Currently, they have a 1,000-foot setback for standard cultivation facilities, and they use a straight line, just like Anchorage and Fairbanks. That's the tools they use, which was not presented to you when you made the decision last September. That should have been shared. So there is a process being put forward right now, so this won't happen again to our schools. I'm sorry, my home phone's ringing. I will now tell you what I would like to share. The state of Alaska established regulations for all marijuana licenses. These regulations and your office are also established to protect our public. Mr. Happy Farm's facility was specifically built to cultivate, providing them with the best opportunity to contain their odor. They chose not to put a hand washing sink for handlers when they designed it. It was constructed prior to applying for a license with you. In order, Matt Shelton's lease agreement does not allow to access the house or the property for hand washing. The owner, Mr. Dykes, has not been a partner since June of last year and no longer lives in the state of Alaska. He is leasing out his residence. Their neighbors on 3 sides of his property all have witnessed odor from this facility. They vent directly onto the 4th side, which is Shaw Elementary. Residents walk past their property on the way to the lake. So much so that Mrs. Dykes put up a sign in bags to have this walking traffic pick up their dog messes left at their mailbox and posted this on Shaw's Facebook. This year-round public use has witnessed Mr. Happy Farm's odor. You received 104 complaints since they all started cultivating. Their neighbors have done everything asked of them by your staff to report these complaints. You provided an advisory in March. That did not change. The odor issues and the complaints continued to come in. At your June meeting, Mr. Shelton spoke with you and answered your questions during that meeting, and complaints were still made after that meeting. Mr. Shelton has not demonstrated that he knows how to operate per state regulations and to not allow odor outside his facility. He has also not upheld his own operating plan and dumps his hydroponic wastewater on his property. AMCO has not written notices of violation for odor for a while. This suggests that the state of Alaska is correct that cultivation facilities can operate without emitting odor outside their facility. 14 months, 104 complaints. Our public should never have to experience this constant abuse. It's totally unacceptable. It would never be allowed if it were to take place in Anchorage. Vote to approve Mr. Happy Farm's license today if you're telling all cultivation facilities that they do not have to be in compliance with operating plans or state regulations to control odor. You have to treat all licenses equally, and you are also obligated to protect the public. Please do not approve this license, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Chairman, one quick question for Ms. Hanson.
Hi.
Yeah.
I was muted.
Mr. Chairman?
I'm sorry, I was on mute. I apologize.
So was I.
Mr. Jaime, Mr. Schulte had the floor, and he had asked Ms. Hanson. If he's willing, I will let you ask her a question.
Go for it.
Okay, Mr.
I
Jaime.
just have a quick question, Ms. Hanson. Do you live in that neighborhood?
I do. Actually, I was born in this neighborhood. My dad was the one who put the neighborhood in. There are covenants for every subdivision. We live in a landlocked neighborhood, one road in, one road out. There are about 281 residential houses. No commercial business is in this area. It's all residential. And the people who live next to him have been there over 20 years. One moved in '84. The other one moved in the 1990s. So Mr. Dykes purchased his house in 2017. 2018 decided to make a living off of it by growing marijuana, which is wonderful. But his house went into foreclosure, and it got turned over to ownership of Mr. Happy Farms, got turned over to his dad, and then his dad was taken off being a partner in May, if I'm correct. So now Mr. Shelton from Eagle River, who has zoned housing, cannot put a marijuana cultivation facility on his property, but now he's operating in a residential area with who knows who will be renting it. And yes, I do live in this area, and this is a very important area for me, and I have known the Casinas since the 80s.
Mr. Jaime, any other questions?
I do not, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Schulte, you said you had several questions.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one clarification and then I wanted to ask the licensee a question. So the clarification is, you had mentioned walking of dogs and dog messes. You kind of lost me on that. I wasn't sure.
Well,
is that something that the licensee was guilty of, or?
No, not at all. It proves the fact that this residential community walks their animals past his property to the lake. There's a big lake. Actually, there are two lakes with public access. It is where everybody walks to. People have walked by their property so much, and actually the Dykeses had dogs, so everyone's pooping at their mailbox. What it shows, it establishes that there is a use. They walk past their property. They all smell marijuana. I've spoken to people. They smell that marijuana. So it's not just the residents that are next to him. It's the people across the street that says he smells it. And it goes across that street where they walk by. Actually, the notice of violation they received, there were 3 MTA workers working across that street, right where our school bus stops 4 times a day, right where the people walk their dogs. That's your notice of violation for them, which Mr. Matt Shelton, I included it, said he would do nothing to fix the odor. If you read
okay,
it.
So the folks are, yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the folks are walking their dogs by. Their dogs are making messes by the mailbox. I'm just kind of curious. Do they clean that up, or do they just leave that there and move on?
I really don't know.
No, I'm not trying to be flippant. It's actually pertinent because in my neighborhood, that's kind of an issue. I live in a part of Anchorage.
She hung out.
Considered rude.
She hung a sign and actually put out bags for them to pick up their poop. I don't walk my dog by there. I can't tell you if they actually use them. But it does show that this is a used area. Residents walk, kids walk by. There's a person I spoke with, had kids, they walk down to the lake, and they smell it on their way. So it's not, yes.
Thanks. So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I have a question for the licensee then.
Okay.
And Ms. Weltine, or you can answer this, or the licensee. So I think in listening to this lady's comments, I was making some notes here, and I think I've identified 4 sort of key issues, and they were zoning, or appropriate use, hand washing facilities, waste disposal, and smell. Can you address any or all of those?
This is Jana. Matt, let me take a few points and then let me toss it off to you, okay?
Sure.
Through the chair, zoning, like I said, the Matthew Borough doesn't have zoning unless it's a SPUD. So this is appropriately zoned. If there's covenants that restrict commercial businesses, which from what I've read of these covenants, it restricts any business that creates a nuisance, the appropriate body to handle that is the Superior Court of Alaska, which is where she needs to go and bear that expense to litigate that issue if that is a concern of her. That is not something the control board has jurisdiction over or should be enforcing. For the smell, I mean, 104 complaints sounds overwhelming, but it came from 4 people. As you can see in Mr. Holster's email attached as Exhibit 5 to my packet, he indicates that between January and February, he received 32 complaints, and the 32 complaints came from 3 people. From what we've seen, and we don't have access to everything, 104 of those complaints, all those complaints boiled down to 4 people. The Canusias, the 3 members of the Canusia family, and Miss Hansen. Going back to this, well, you didn't ask me about the school, but did you want me to address the school issue?
Sure.
Going back to this issue on the school, this was already litigated and decided by the Marijuana Control Board in September 2019. There's strong precedent from the Supreme Court that agencies' determinations are final, and unless they're timely appealed, the issue is settled. You don't just keep coming back and back and back and having bites of the apple and bites of the apple. It's barred. It's an issue of fairness, and it's an issue of reliability of being able to rely on a quasi-judicial or judicial ruling. So coming back to that is, I mean, that will be overturned by administrative law judge. If that's the route.
Ms. Walsine, it actually wasn't decided back then. Yes, the vote passed, but it was not decided. It was a 3-issue decision back then. It was a close decision, so it's still undecided. It was unanimous. That's one thing, but it was not. So I believe this is still up for discussion. Thank you.
And that's fine. That's your position, but I don't want to really get into a legal debate about it.
Well, I actually do. So,
Ms. Wilson?
If anyone wants my opinion, there isn't a precedent that says the principles of res judicata and issue preclusion may be loosened in the administrative context, and I can send you the recent Supreme Court case that I'm looking at on that. So I don't think this is the right forum for arguing collateral estoppel or issue preclusion. If there's an appeal, that might be the right forum.
I agree, Ms. Wilson. And I wanted to go back to the distance. The distance of where Ms. Hansen lives. You know, we definitely value her father's contribution to the subdivision, but she does live 0.7 miles away from the actual facility. Mr. Holster Chief Holster did investigate the water that she referenced, and the wastewater, it didn't come from marijuana plants, it's from the dehumidifier, which, again, we don't know how she viewed the dehumidifier water being dumped out. That's a different issue, but it was just dehumidifier water. There's no issue there with wastewater that came from the marijuana facility. I would like Mr. Shelton to go through the improvements he's made to the ventilation system, which has, shown that there is a real mitigation done to the smell complaints. And I also would direct you and request that you review all of the affidavits he's provided on Exhibit 6 and his own internal smell logs within Exhibit 6 of the document that I sent you that indicates that the smell issue is really not an issue. From enforcement visits to the people actually going to the facility, other than these 4 individuals, no one else seems to be detecting a smell. So with that, Mr. Shelton, could you go over your improvements to the ventilation system and and not just the hand washing issue as well?
Mr. Shelton. Yes, go ahead.
So as far as my building, it's a very small building. As you know, it's a limited 500-foot canopy. My flower room is only 320 foot of my grow, it's completely sealed. No, it does not vent to the outside. My vegetative room is sealed. It has a AC unit in it, and that vents through a commercial grade double carbon filter stealth air box with, the filters cost approximately $200 to change out. They get changed out more than they need to now, just to stay in compliance. After talking with James in early part of the year, Holscher, I've installed air scrubbers in my flower room at additional cost to me, where at the request of doing something to show an improvement, even though I still stand by the fact that I'm not emitting an odor off of my property. I'm still trying to make these improvements to do what I can to show that. As far as the wastewater, it was dehumidifier water, but since then I've been able to up my storage capacity, so now I'm able to contain and recycle that dehumidifier water into my watering process. And as far as the hand washing station goes, yes, I don't know where they get their information, but we were in good standings with the homeowners and had an agreement to be able to use the downstairs sink. And since then, we've actually secured a lease for the home today for 2 years that'll be, my wife's company will be leasing it, and our contractor will be living there with her senior grandmother and her young child. So access to the downstairs bathroom is more secure now than it ever was. So, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little flustered and lost. If you can redirect me in any way you want me to go, I apologize. This is not an
since I asked the question, I'll just address it. I think we owe both sides here, an opportunity to air the grievances, and since you've been accused of various things, I wanted you to have the opportunity to address any mitigation measures. So I think you've answered my questions.
Okay. Did you have any other questions, Mr. Schultz?
I do not. Thank you.
Through the chair, I did want to just point out one more issue on the school.
Ms. Wellstein.
Sure. So as Chief Holster's email on Exhibit 5 states, the measurement from the property line to the edge of the playground is 2,100 feet, straight line, and then 2,300 to actually the edge of the building. And then also, if you look through my document that I sent you, Exhibit 4, we went ahead and used the state's Find Your School function where you input your address. And so we inputted the cultivation facility's address to find out what school they would attend. Since they're so close to the Shaw Elementary, allegedly, you would think that would be the school assigned. But it wasn't. The school assigned was Finger Lake Elementary, is a different school because it was closer pedestrian route to get to that school than it is to get to Shaw Elementary. So I just wanted to let you know that we did that that work too, and that's included in your packet.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Holscher.
So I just want to clarify a few things because my name's been mentioned quite a bit in the past 10 minutes. Everything is absolutely true on the regards of the complaints and of the wastewater. I just want to clarify for the board and the record, enforcement stance on the distance to the school property line is less than 500 feet by way of the defining, the way statute defines it. And I think I made that clear last year. So I don't know where the 2,000 feet comes in if you don't take into consideration the back of the licensed premises to the property line of the school. So I just want to clarify for the record, without having words being put in my mouth, that I do believe that this is within 500 feet of a school property line by way of the way Title 11 defines the school boundary line.
Thank you, Mr. Holster. Is there any other questions from the board?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Mr. Schultz.
Yeah, for Chief Holscher, I'm trying to recall back to that conversation that we had last September. My recollection was that we had this discussion and that it met the distance requirements as measured along the pedestrian path, which I believe is the measure of record. Am I missing something there? Or it sounds like we're talking about two different interpretations of the distance measurement.
The legal pedestrian route, you are correct. If they left the property and walked to the school, that is a property amount. But when you take the property itself is butt up against the school boundary line right there, and that is less than 500 feet.
Well, okay, I understand, but I mean, what we're bound by is what's written in the regulations, and I just want to make sure that we're talking about the same thing.
Okay.
Because what's written in the regulations says that it's measured along the line of travel.
I didn't argue any of that last year. I just gave you guys the information. What you guys decided on was with the information that was provided. So I don't think I ever agreed on anything. I just provided the information, and it's up to the board's interpretation to say if that's within your guys' definition of shortest pedestrian route. So.
And through the chair, just so the record's clear, I attached in Exhibit 3 all of the minutes from July and September relating to this issue. So you could refer to that too if anybody needs refreshing.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board members?
Through the chair.
Mr. Miller.
So I apologize. I don't remember the objectioner's name that we have on the phone.
Ms. Hanson.
Ms. Hanson, thank you. You said there was 281 homes in this subdivision?
Ms. Hanson?
I'm sorry, I was on mute. There are 281 houses in the multiple subdivisions in this area. I think all but 2 of the 11 subdivisions have covenants pointing them in single-family residential homes. There is no commercial business in this entire area. One road in, one road out. The only way you can get into this area.
So,
Mr. Miller,
what has the homeowners association position on this?
There is no homeowners association. The $10,000 to sue them, to pull their business, would come out of whoever brought them to court. That is a very large sum of money, and they have been waiting to see you keep them away from the school because that's what the Mat-Su Borough are going to do, and what you should have done. The borough uses a straight line. The borough uses
I understand the borough regulations now. I understand the borough regulations. I was just curious, had a couple pointed questions, and I appreciate your answers.
Mr. Miller, you had another question of Mr. Holscher?
I did. How many complaints have we received this year? I hope you have that handy.
No, I do not. I apologize. I don't believe it was anywhere near I believe back in February or March, I cited the number of complaints that we had received, and I can almost say with certainty that we didn't receive 70 more since then. If they have, those have not been shared with me from the general enforcement inbox. So I can't get the exact number of complaints, so I apologize.
No, that's fine. Well, outside of the, I guess the four folks that I've seen several times, have there been complaints from other neighbors, or is it really just these 4?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Miller, off memory, I could say that the complaints have come from, the majority of them, probably 90% or more, have come from the 4 individuals.
Okay, thank you.
On the phone, there is somebody else that does not have their phone muted, and we can hear some conversation and some banging around. If you could mute your phone, please. It makes it easier for us to conduct our meeting.
Through the chair, could I respond to the point that Ms. Hanson raised about businesses in the subdivision?
This Ms. Welsing?
Yes.
Yes, you may. We need to keep this quick. Anyway,
Sure, it's
go
real
ahead.
quick. Ron Canuza Builders LLC, owned by Ron Canuza, who's one of the objectors, has his business listed, at 400 North Sierra Street. And so that is actually in that subdivision. It's their residence. So I do believe there's other businesses in the area.
Did we get anywhere over there?
Okay, thank you. There's some other conversation going on. Somebody just mentioned.
One, they'll fly through.
I don't know who's talking, but could you mute your phone, please? We do not need to hear your side conversation. Thank you. Are there any other questions of either the objector or the applicant for Mr. Happy Farms?
I have no more questions for them, but I'm trying to find the exact section in the regs where it addresses the measurement of the distance. You would think I would have that memorized by now.
I was just reading that, sir. Let me see if I can pull it up quickly for you.
Oh, thank you.
It's early in the regulations.
It's like 15 or
couple
something.
pages.
015.
306, 015.
Ms. Wilson?
I had them closed and now I'm opening them up again.
Okay, it's 306-010 license restrictions. The board will not issue a marijuana establishment license if the licensed premises be located within 500 feet of a school ground. The distance specified in this subsection must be measured by the shortest pedestrian route from the public entrance of the building to which the licensed premise would be located to the outer boundaries of the school ground, the outer boundaries of the recreation or youth center, and the main public entrance of the building in which religious services are regularly conducted, or the main public entrance of a correctional facility. So of interest to us is from the entrance to the building of the licensed premises to be located to the outer boundaries of the school ground by the shortest pedestrian route.
Okay, thank you. And that's I wanted to reread that because this is a key point of discussion, and this is what we focused on last September. And I wanted to be, after Mr. Holster's comments, I wanted to be very, very clear that we as a board, as a deliberative body, are looking at the regulations and what they say, not interpreting them on the fly. Now I realize, also I remember looking at the site plan, the aerial photos of this property, and there's some legitimate questions about what constitutes a pedestrian route. Whether or not a trek through the woods is considered a pedestrian route, or if one would be expected to travel the roads around, makes a huge difference in this case. But I think it's important that we're clear about what we're talking about. So, okay, I have no further questions. I'm not inclined to support a denial, but I have no more questions.
Okay, any other questions from the board members? Okay, we have a motion before us, and the motion is to deny the renewal application for Mr. Happy Farms LLC. No other questions of the board members of the member who filed some of the objections, and from the applicant and the applicant's attorney. We've also heard from enforcement. So on the motion to deny the application,
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Wilson.
Hello? No, this is Cammie Pedsworth. I'm the contractor at Mr. Happy Farms, and I'm going to be the new tenant on the property, and I wasn't sure when I should speak up or not.
I don't believe anybody had any questions to ask of you, so...
Well, I just wanted to address something that Ms. Hanson said about who's going to be living here and whatnot.
Okay, please.
Okay, I've been a resident in the valley here for 34 years. I've been in the forest for 32 years. I've done a lot of volunteer donations to the schools. I work with a lot of the teachers to schools that you're referring to. My 8-year-old son will actually be attending Finger Lake. My 78-year-old mother is going to be living here with me. I've been helping Matt for over a year now. Last summer, I was in a really bad wreck, lost my house, lost my husband, couldn't walk. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have anything right now. I'm sorry, I'm crying. This is really emotional for me. My mother and I would be out on the streets if it was not for this man. And I have done everything possible to help him, make it easier for these neighbors we have. I would actually like to go introduce myself to them so they have an idea of what goes on here, and I can remove the stigma of what they think is here because of previous tenants from the last two homeowners. I know several mothers in this neighborhood with children. Some actually live close to Miss Hanson, and I do know of people who partake that live close to Miss Hanson. My son's teacher actually lives on the same street with her. And I just hope to God you guys make the right decision for this, because this is a man who puts a lot of money back into our community. He buys all of his stuff locally. Anything we can, we try as hard as we can to buy stuff here in the valley to use for our grow. And I don't know if you guys have any other questions for me, but I have been here for a year now, and I have not had any odor. When I've come up, I've never smelled anything. Neither has my mother. Neither has anybody who's ever come to help us. It's just sad that people can harass a business owner to this point and have to keep proving ourselves over and over again when we're doing everything by regulation. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the board?
Through the chair, I don't have a question. I just have one last statement, then I'm done.
Mr. Jaime.
I feel that I have to say it one more time. It's upon, incumbent upon the board that we take care of the most vulnerable, people and most important population, and that's our children. And this business is way too close to school. So, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Jaime. Okay, any other comments or questions from board members? Okay, on the motion to deny the renewal application for license 17692, Mr. Happy Farms LLC, Mr. Miller.
No.
Mr. Jaime.
Yes.
Mr. DeShock.
No.
Mr. Schulte.
No.
And I'm a no. So that motion fails. Do we have another motion?
I would move to approve renewal of license number 17692, Mr. Happy Farms.
Second.
Okay, is there a second? There is a second. Okay, we've had lots of discussion, so on the question of the motion to approve the renewal license of 17692, Mr. Happy Farms LLC, Mr. DeShock.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Jaime.
No.
Mr. Schulte.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That motion passes 4-1. Thank you, Ms. Hanson, Ms. Wilstein, Mr. Shelton, and I can't remember the other person. And thank you for hanging in there while we go through the discussion.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. So we are now on to renewal licenses for those that have NOVs. So that would be tab 29, the first one, which is Rosy Creek Farm. And so Mr. Clinkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a renewal application for a standard marijuana cultivation facilities in the Fairbanks North Star Borough by RCFC LLC, doing business as Rosy Creek Farm. There's been no protest from the local government. Protest ends September 28th. No objections. The notice of violations is present. No questions from the staff. I turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair.
Is there anybody online from Rosy Creek Farms?
Jana Waltzine, attorney for Rosy Creek Farms, and Mike Emmers is on the phone.
Okay. Do we have a motion from the board?
Yeah, move to approve renewal of license 10005 Rose Creek Farm.
Okay, is there a second?
Second. Couldn't find my mute button.
Thank you. So there is a second. This is one NOV for tax delinquency, so the question is, are taxes up to date?
Yes, they are. Mike, if you want to chime in too.
Yeah, my taxes are up to date right now.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board members to the licensee? Okay, so on the motion to approve the renewal of license 10005, Mr. DeShock.
Yeah.
Mr. Jaime.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Schulte.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next one is tab 30. And this is license renewal for Can Test LLC, a marijuana testing facility. Mr. Klinkart.
Mr. Chair, this is a renewal application for a marijuana testing facility in the municipality of Anchorage by Can Test LLC, doing business as Can Test LLC. No government protest. Protest ends on the 18th of September, and you will see the one attached notice of violation for your review. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Is there anybody online from Can Test LLC?
Yep, Jonathan's here and Mark's available as well if you need him.
Okay. And could you say your name slower for me? I couldn't write that down quick enough.
It's Jonathan Strong, S-T-R-O-N-G.
Okay, Jonathan. Is there a motion from the board?
Yeah, move to approve renewal of license number 10009 Can Test.
Is there a second?
And through the chair, I'll second, but I have a question.
Mr. Miller.
I was involved in this NOV, so I'm not sure if I should recuse myself.
Ms. Wilson.
If I would say yes.
Okay. Mr. Miller, you should excuse yourself from voting and/or discussion.
Done.
Okay, are there any questions from the board members? And we should probably get another second other than Mr. Miller. Is there another second?
I will second it.
Okay, Mr. Jaime. Any questions from the board or the applicant?
Yeah,
this is Jaime.
Mr. Jaime.
No, I just want to say I do appreciate that fact that this was a self-report and it's not a violation, reported service violation. So I want to thank this business.
Okay, Mr. Schulte.
Yeah, I was just gonna, I think I've actually answered the question here. In reading the NOV, I see that there were 65 grams that had been sold before the problem was identified. I really don't have any more questions. Actually, I mean, I appreciate too the fact that everybody involved owned up to the problem and they corrected as quickly as they could.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Okay. Well, with Mr. Miller recusing himself on the motion to approve the renewal license for license 10009 Can Test LLC. Mr. DeShock. Mr. Schulte.
I apologize. I do have one question that is kind of pertinent, and I think this is probably oddly enough, I think this might actually be a question for Mr. Miller. Was all the material that was identified as being substandard or failing, was that all pulled off the shelves and removed from the the retail stream?
Through the chair, it has since been remediated and made into carts and gone.
Okay, cool. Okay, thank you. I think that's a very pertinent question given some of the other things that we've seen over the last year. So I have no more questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, so on the motion to approve the renewal of license 10009, Mr. Schulte?
Yes.
Mr. DeShock?
Yes.
Mr. Jaime?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, and Mr. Miller was excused, so that motion passes. We are on to tab 31, which is a renewal license for Red Run Cannabis Cultivators, LLC, license 10052. Mr. Klinkart.
Mr. Chair, this is a renewal application for a standard marijuana cultivation facility in the city of Kenai by Red Run Cannabis Cultivators, doing business as Red Run Cannabis Cultivators. No government protest, and you can see the attached NOV reference tax. Over.
Okay. Is there anybody online from Red Run Cannabis Cultivators, LLC?
Yes, Mark Tyler.
Mark Tyler?
Yes, Mark Tyler, managing partner with Red Run Cannabis Cultivator.
Okay. I wanted to make sure I heard the last name correctly. Is there a motion from the board?
Make sure I'm unmuted here. Yeah, move to approve the renewal of license number 10052, Red Run Cannabis.
Second.
Is there a second? There is a second. Any questions of the applicant? I will ask it then. Are your taxes paid?
Yes, sir, they are.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board?
That was pretty much the question to ask, wasn't it? I was reading the NOV. No further questions.
It was. It helps to read it the day before, Mr. Schulte. Okay, so on the question of approval of the renewal for license 10052 Red Run Cannabis Cultivators, LLC, Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. DeShock?
Yes.
Mr. Jaime?
Yes.
Mr. Schulte?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So that motion is approved. We are on to tab 32, Alaskan Blooms, excuse me. And this is license 10073. Mr. Klinkart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a renewal application for a standard marijuana cultivation facility in the Fairbanks North Star Borough by Alaskan Blooms, LLC. And this is an NOV which is attached, having to do with marijuana tax. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And who is online from Alaskan Blooms, LLC?
Lyndon Anson.
Is that Hanson?
Anson. A-N-S-O-N.
Okay. Is there a motion from the board?
Move to approve renewal of license number 10073, Alaska Blooms, and I have a question.
Is there a second? There is a second. Your question, Mr. Schulte.
Mr. Anson, are your taxes all paid up?
At this time, yes, they are.
Awesome. Thank you.
I love the qualifier. Any other questions?
It's it's 2020.
Yeah, I know. This is the weirdest year I've ever lived in, and that's been 74 of them. So, is there any other questions for the applicant? So the motion before us is to approve the renewal of license 10073, Alaskan Blooms, LLC. Mr. DeShock?
Yes.
Mr. Schulte,
Yes.
Mr. Jaime,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
and I'm a yes, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're on to tab 33, the Frost Frontier license 10161. Mr. Klinkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And whoever is on the line needs to make sure that they put their phone on mute, please. This is a renewal application for a standard marijuana cultivation facility in the municipality of Anchorage by the Frost Frontier, doing business as Frost Frontier. Attached is the single notice of violation, reference an odor complaint. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Is there someone online from the Frost Frontier LLC?
Yes, so I'm here with the Frost Frontier. My name is Brady. Last name is Farr, F-A-R-R, and I'm one of the managing partners.
Okay, Mr. Farr. Is there a motion from the board?
Yeah, move to approve renewal of license number 10161, Frost Frontier.
Second.
And it's been seconded. Is there a question from the board?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Mr. Schulte.
Mr. Farr, I read the NOV in your letter in response. Can you just run us through briefly what happened with your filtration and what you're doing to keep that from happening again?
Yeah, we had some airflow issues with the way our air system was set up. We've since made the changes to ensure the airflow is going through the carbon filters, which have also been replaced, and the product, we were having a hard time getting the product shipped up, and we've now gotten that plus everything we need. So it's since been replaced several times since the NOV, and we haven't had any issues since.
Okay, thanks. I have no further questions.
Any other questions
through
from
the chair.
board members? Mr. Jaime.
Jaime. Through the chair, question for enforcement. This NOV was for this last cycle of license renewal. This name sounds familiar. Was there one other or past NOVs?
If you're asking me, we have had 3 smell odors, and this would be the 3rd one.
Can you tell me the years of those? What years those occurred?
Yeah. Sorry, I have the current one pulled up. Let me just see if I can pull those other ones up real quick here. Pardon me one moment. I have them here. Okay. So I've got from the 14th of 2019, the February 14th of 2019 and December 28th of 2018.
Okay.
Mr. Jaime.
No, no further questions for the licensee. Just a comment to the board. I think this is why a bail schedule would be, important, so we can address these and just move on. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, any other questions? All right, so on the motion to approve the renewal of license 10161, the Frost Frontier, Mr. Jaime.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. DeShock.
Yes.
Mr. Schulte.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Okay, so we are on to license 10237 Alaska Sense LLC. This is tab 34. And there are 7 NOVs for delinquent taxes. Mr. Klinkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a renewal for a standard marijuana cultivation facility in the municipality of Anchorage by Alaska Sense LLC, doing business as Alaska Sense LLC, and I refer to the board to the attached NOVs. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
And who is online from Alaska Sense LLC?
Dana Wellstein, attorney for Smotty Warden, and Smotty is also on the phone. I did just want to say, actually, all of the taxes have been paid, and she actually has a $134 credit with the Department of Revenue now. So it took a long time. If you remember, in 2018, I think, when we dealt with this issue of non-payment and an accusation, it took a long time for her to get all the way caught up, and now she is completely caught up and actually has a credit.
Okay. Do we have a motion from the board?
Move to approve renewal of license number 10237, Alaska Sense.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there is a second. Okay, are there any questions of the applicant from the board?
She already answered mine.
Okay.
Through the
Any
chair,
other questions? Mr. Miller.
Through the chair, I do have one comment.
Mr. Miller.
So, taxes have been an issue for this licensee in the past. It's great to see that they now have a credit, but I sure hope that at the next renewal season, we don't see any NOVs for non-payment of taxes. So, and I'll just leave my comment there.
Okay. Any other comments?
This is Jaime. It's a quick comment to state that
Mr. Jaime.
I think 7 NOVs is pretty egregious. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from board members? Okay, so on the motion to approve the renewal of license 10237 Alaska Sense LLC, Mr. Jaime.
No.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. DeShock.
Yes.
Mr. Schulte.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That motion passes.
Thank you.
Make sure I'm on the right page here. Okay, so we are still on license renewal applications. This is license 11092, Fairbanks Fireweed LLC, and this is tab 35. Mr. Klinkert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This renewal application is for a standard marijuana cultivation facility in the Fairbanks North Star Borough by Fairbanks Fireweed, doing business as Fairbanks Fireweed. And the board, I direct your attention to the NOV reference unapproved transfer of controlling interest. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Is there anybody online from licensee Fairbanks Fireweed LLC?
Dana Wellstein, attorney for Fairbanks Fireweed. We got hired right after this NOV, and we promptly filed the actual transfer that needed to be filed and followed all those steps to make sure this license remained in good compliance. And that's pretty much it.
Okay. Is there a motion from the board?
Move to approve renewal of license number 11092, Fairbanks Fireweed.
Second.
Okay, so motion to approve the renewal and seconded. Is there any comments or questions from board members?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Mr. Schulte.
Yeah, Ms. Wellstein, could you maybe just walk us through quickly where we're at in terms of the transfer of ownership, which was the basis of the NOV?
Oh, yep, yes. I believe that was approved several meetings ago. I want to say April of it was probably even sooner than that. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was promptly submitted and then promptly approved at your control board hearing. And then that's basically it, because we also did another transfer to actually within that transfer, we did to the Fairbanks Fireweed LLC. We created a company for him.
Mr. Schulte, does that answer your question?
It does. I was actually just looking back at the April packet, but no, I have no further questions.
Okay, because this NOV was dated on 7/23/19. I would assume that since we're into August of 2020, we've approved the transfer somewhere along the line.
Yes, and it was a while ago.
Okay, any other questions? So on the motion to approve the renewal of license 11092 Fairbanks Fireweed LLC, Mr. Jaime.
No.
Mr. DeShock.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Schulte.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Okay, so moving on to license tab 36, license renewal 14245, Canna Frost in Wasilla. Mr. Klinkart.
Thank you, sir. This is a renewal application for a limited marijuana cultivation facility in the Matsu Borough by Pharma Initiative LLC, doing business as Canna Frost. And board may recall that we had discussions on this at a meeting here not too long ago, and this is just the accompanying NOV. I return it back to you, Mr. Chair.
And who is online from Canna Frost LLC?
Jana Weltstein, attorney, and Carrie Teakle is also on the phone.
How do you spell the last name?
T as in Tom, K-E-L-L.
Okay. Mr. Teakle, is there a motion from the board?
Move to approve renewal, license number 14245, Canna Frost.
Second.
Is there a second? There is a second. Is there any questions of the applicant?
Through the chair, this is Jaime.
Mr. Jaime.
I don't have a question for the licensee, but I do have a question for either the board or enforcement. I do recall that this discussion in the previous meeting. What was the outcome of that discussion?
Mr. Klinkart, or is Mr. Holscher still on the line?
Yeah, no, this is Director Klinkart. If you recall, I believe the licensee took full responsibility for the errors and made attempts and apparently fixed all of the discrepancies. And that's what the discussion was. This is just the reflective NOV as part of you being aware of it during their renewal. But certainly if there's any other questions, we'll do our best to answer them.
No. Through the chair, Director, I do appreciate that. I remember that whole discussion. Thank you.
And through the chair, could I just add one more thing that's happened?
Sure, Ms. Welstein, earn your pay.
Thank you. The fee that was assigned to this licensee from the Marijuana Control Board was submitted to AMSCO, I believe, yesterday.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Okay, hearing no questions, the motion is to approve the renewal of license 14245, Canna Frost. Mr. Jaime.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Schulte.
Yes.
Mr. DeShock.
Yes.
And I'm a yes.
Thank you.
So we'll go with that. So we're on tab 37, which is a renewal of a license 16474, Grateful Bud LLC. Mr. Klinkart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a renewal application for a limited marijuana cultivation facility within the city of Kenai by Grateful Bud LLC, doing business as Grateful Bud. And the attached NOV is one NOV for, 5 NOVs for tax delinquency. I turn it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Is there anybody online from Grateful Bud LLC?
Jana Weltstein, attorney for Grateful Bud LLC, and Jennifer Huffman, licensee, is also on the phone.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a motion from the board?
Yeah, move to approve renewal of license number 16474, Grateful Bud.
Second. Is there a second? There is a motion and a second. Are there questions from the board?
I have a question.
Mr. Schulte.
Yeah, what's the current status of your taxes?
So I don't want to give the dollar amount, but I'll tell you it's less than 15,000. They've been hacking away at it. As you can see, I think on page 6, you can see that give you a record. They've been making payments. So and Jennifer, stop me if you want to jump in at all, but I believe they're going to be able to get their hands around this pretty soon. Again, it's less than 15,000. Jennifer, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, we've both had COVID, and it's just been a terrible year as people. So that put a pretty big damper on our crop and our coming of the second crop after that. So it caused some pretty major delays, and so here we sit. So we're working on getting caught up pretty rapidly.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
I was just clarifying that. So this is a limited grow. How? No, never mind. I don't have any other questions.
Okay.
Ms. Hyman, I have one question.
Mr. Hyman.
Ms. Huffman, you blame this on COVID. It looks like 3 of the NOVs were prior to March of this year. Can you explain what the issue was prior to March?
Yeah, they've all been paid up, but the cultivator was sick and that caused the big delay there. So I'm not sure.
No, you just blame COVID for these NOVs, and like I said, 3 of these were prior to March when all the mandates started coming out.
I was just explaining that we had a crop catastrophe, and so that that comes with not making enough money and not being able to pay the taxes when you have a catastrophic failure. So I know that plays a big part in the 2020 problem.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so on the motion to renew the license 16474 Grateful Bud LLC, Mr. Hyman.
No.
Mr. DeShock.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Schulte.
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that passes 4-2. Last one on this particular block is license or tab 38, license 19372, Red Run Cannabis Cultivators LLC. And this is a marijuana product manufacturing. Mr. Klinkhart.
Mr. Chair, this is a renewal application for a marijuana product manufacturing facility in the city of Kenai by Red Run Cannabis Cultivators, doing business as Red Run Cannabis Cultivators. And this is reference 1 NOV for unapproved product change. The NOV is attached, and I return it back to you, Mr. Chair.
And who is online from Red Run Cannabis Cultivators?
Mark Tyler again, managing partner with Red Run Cannabis Cultivators.
Thank you, Mr. Tyler. Is there a motion from the board?
Move to approve license renewal for license number 19372, Red Run Cannabis Cultivators.
Second.
And been moved and seconded to renew the license. Is there any questions from the board or the applicant?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Mr. Schulte.
So the NOV I'm looking at, dated 10/7/19, it talks about some discrepancy in packaging and labeling of some hash aid. Could you kind of explain to us what the deal was there and what the resolution was?
Well, it's been a change in the specific bottle itself, and just even securing bottles. Each bottle's different, and it'll have different weights on it and whatnot. I kind of laid that all out in the letter there. But basically, the bottle that has been settled on for quite some time is that 8-ounce, 230-gram total mass. So it was just a basic starting out with one bottle and the differences of the bottle we landed on, and still we still succumb to supply chain issues.
I think, didn't we have a lengthy discussion about the bottling, some of the challenges with bottling at the No meeting last year? Or am I confusing that with another product?
I'm not sure, but I know that we've had discussions about the bottling in general because it's been a great evolution across the board.
That's what I remembered from it too. That you'd gone through a lot of different iterations on finding the right type of bottle. Okay, I have no further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Are there any other questions of the applicant by the board? Okay. So there is a motion before us to approve the renewal license 19372 Red Run Cannabis Cultivators LLC. Mr. Schulte?
Yes.
Mr. Jaime?
Yes.
Mr. DeShock?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so thank you very much. Okay, so we are now down to operating changes. This is tab 39, license 10098, Raspberry Roots. Mr. Klinkart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Raspberry Roots is a standard marijuana cultivation facility in the municipality of Anchorage. They're requesting approval to an amendment in its operating plan. Attached is the MJ15 change application and the current operating plan for the board's review. Additionally, they also attached the MJ14 in case it's needed. Temporary approval was given for the MJ15. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Is there anybody online from Raspberry Roots?
Yes, Shannon Wellstein. Okay, and then, yes, Kim Cole, licensee.
Okay, Ms. Cole.
These guys.
Is there a motion from the board?
Move to approve the operating plan change for license number 10098, Raspberry Roots.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. And this was temporarily approved by the director. Are there any questions of the applicant? Okay, hearing no questions of the applicant, the motion before us is to approve the operating change to license 10098 Raspberry Roots. Mr. DeShock.
Yes.
Mr. Jaime.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Schulte.
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so thank you very much. Okay, we are on to tab 40, JWS Enterprises, license 10657 in Ketchikan Gateway Borough. Mr. Klinkart.
Mr. Chair, JWS Enterprises is a standard marijuana cultivation facility in the Ketchikan Gateway Borough, requesting approval of some amendment to an operating plan. Attached is the operating plan app. The license premises diagram change in case it's referenced, and temporary approval was given by the office for the MJ15. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Is there anybody online from JWS Enterprises?
Yes, Mark Woodward.
Okay. Motion from the board.
Move to approve the operating plan change for license number 10657 JWS Enterprises.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the operating plan change. Is there any questions from the board to the applicant?
This is Jaime. I just have a quick question.
Mr. Jaime.
Without looking at the map, I see that, a portion of the grow is done in a high tunnel greenhouse. Is that area fenced in?
Yes, it is. The entire area is fenced in.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Schulte.
Yeah, because the first aerial photo I'm looking at here is a little muted. Is this on Gravina Island?
Yes, it is. It's very remote.
Hey, I know. I used to fly down there. It's really remote.
Oh, yeah. It's over by the airport.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I used to fly for TAC 1, so I just want to make sure this is the right island. Okay, cool.
Yep. You're right.
All right.
Okay.
No
Any other questions from the board? Okay, I had a couple of questions. It says that the first floor is a shop and that this new dry facility will be on the second floor. Is that,
Yes, sir.
was I understanding that correct? What is on the first floor?
The structure is a barn, and so it's just a room. We have tools and stuff like that, but it's just the staircase is right there and right next to the door, and so it's a barn structure.
Okay. So generally, we have viewed this as if you have separate buildings, that all of that is part of the licensed premises. Since you would be moving product between the high tunnel, and B, I assume that the bottom floor is cameraed, that the places between the buildings are cameraed, so movement of the marijuana within the licensed premises is constantly being reviewed by cameras. Is that correct?
Oh, we have about a dozen cameras. I want to say 7 of them or something like that are outdoors. And so, yes, you cannot. In fact, we did tests. You cannot walk on the licensed premises area at all without being seen by a camera at any time.
Okay.
So even that downstairs barn area, inside and outside. Yes, correct.
Okay, that was my questions. I just wanted to make sure, since I know enforcement can't get down there as often, and to sort of virtually review that is almost impossible. I wanted to get that on the record. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Okay, so on the motion to approve the operating plan changes that have been temporarily approved by the director for license 10657 JWS Enterprises. Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Jaime.
Yes.
Mr. DeShock.
Yes.
Mr. Schulte.
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so thank you very much. Okay, so we are on to license 10922 Sparkle Farms, Alaska. This is tab 41. Mr. Klinkart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sparkle Farms, Alaska is a limited marijuana cultivation facility in the Ketchikan Gateway Borough, requesting approval of some amendments to its operating plan. Attached is the request as well as their diagram, and it was temporarily approved by the AMCO office on an MJ-15. Back to you.
Okay. Is there anybody online from Sparkle Farms LLC?
Yes, this is Tia Wilhelm.
Who is the first person?
Tia Wilhelm,
This is
and
Chris
I think
Wil-
my husband, Chris, is also.
Okay.
I'm trying to participate, but I'm in transit, and we're going to close the door to the cockpit here pretty soon.
Okay, that's fine. We have Tina online, or Tia. Is there a motion from the board?
Move to approve the operating plan change for license number 10922 Sparkle Farms.
Second.
Is there a second? There is a second. Are there any questions of the applicant? Okay, hearing none. I had the same question related to camera coverage, especially given that you have a separate license, which is for your bakery, and so you're now adding another building. I'm assuming that all of the outside area and all the movement of product onto and off the property with the bakery and all of that is cambered?
Yes, it
Ms.
is.
Wilhelm?
Yes,
Okay.
we do have lots of cameras inside and out.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Okay, so on the motion to approve the operating plan changes for license 10922 SFA LLC, Mr. DeShock.
Yes.
Mr. Jaime.
Yes.
Mr. Schulte.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're now on to tab 42, Arctic Bakery, license number 16006. Mr. Klinkart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Arctic Bakery, a marijuana product manufacturing facility, requests approval of amendments to its operating plan. And additionally, there are 6 products attached to the NJ15 operating plan and currently approved products. It was temporarily approved by the director, and I turn it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Is there anybody online from Arctic Bakery LLC?
Jana Weltine, attorney for Arctic Bakery, and Sean Evans. Sean, are you there?
Yes.
Oh, great.
And who is Sean? SHAWN?
Yep,
Yes,
Evans, EVANS, one of the licensees.
Okay, thank you. Motion from the board.
Okay, so I would move to approve these products, these 6 products for Arctic Bakery number. Sorry.
Through the chair, just to specify, these products are already approved. It's just like specifying the exact ingredients have been updated to make sure all of the ingredients are approved through the control board. That's all this is.
Okay. Well, maybe actually, Mr. Chairman, before I make the motion, maybe I could just ask the question because it might actually put things in proper context, if I may.
Mr. Schulte.
Yeah, perhaps you guys could just, it looks like you're changing the ingredients or clarifying the ingredients. Could you just sort of elaborate on what the difference is from the originally approved products?
Ms. Wilson,
Sure.
Mr. Evans.
Yeah, I can hit that, Sean, or if you want to, you can answer that.
No, go ahead.
Okay, it's just specifying the exact ingredients. So vegetable oil is now, palm oil and hydrated palm kernel oil. It's specifying the emulsifiers. It's specifying, whey powder. That's all it is through all of them.
Okay, and they were previously approved, but with some lesser degree of detail?
Specificity, yes.
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions, Mr. Schultz?
No.
Okay.
No.
I think most of them, as I read those, were like take the North Star Dark Chocolate Orange. It says ingredients: semi-sweet chocolate, sunflower lectin on the current one. The ones on your tab that say C, and then if you go to the new one, it talks about sugar, vegetable oil, cocoa powder, soy lectine, whey powder. It doesn't mention semi-sweet chocolate or any of that kind of stuff. So it's just really changing the ingredient list.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, this is Jaime.
Mr. Jaime.
Yes, I'd just like to thank Mr. Evans for actually being a little more detailed than most of the other operators out there. So thank you, Mr. Evans.
No, thank you. Yes, sir.
Okay, so any other questions from the board to Arctic Bakery? Okay, well, motion to approve the operating changes that have been temporarily approved by the director. Are there any other questions before the board or from the board?
just to keep everything clear, I don't think I ever actually finished making the motion, so.
Oh, okay.
And I don't think there was a second, so I'll make that motion to approve the changes, and if somebody would like to second it.
Second.
Okay.
Mr. Miller.
I know somebody's furrowing their brow right now.
I know. I'm probably somebody that's a minute taker.
Exactly.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Okay, so on the motion to approve the operating plan changes that have been temporarily approved by the director for license 16006 Arctic Bakery, Mr. Jaime.
Yes.
Mr. Schulte.
Yes.
Mr. DeShock.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so thank you very much. Okay, we have
Thank you.
two more.
Thank
They
you.
are new products. Before we get into the ones that we have, are going to skip over the delegated and the pending. So
Welcome to the GCI Conference Center. Thank you. Please stand by. You will now be placed into conference. There are 46 participants in the conference.
all right, thank you. Is there a motion from the board?
Yeah, move to approve a new product for Einstein Labs, license number 10082.
Second.
Okay, and there is a second. Ms. Wilsine or Mr. Rowland, can you walk us through the new product?
Absolutely. We're just bringing a new cake pop to the market. They're just going to be singly served, so that's not confusing in any way, and individually packaged. They're basic cake makeup with light chocolate coating on them.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board?
I just have
Mr. Jaime, quick question with
Mr. Jaime.
A quick question in the description of the product. I mean, these are colorful, you know, suckers or lollipops or whatever that. I mean, look, I'd eat one of those. They look chocolate filled. They look tasty. Are these two, you know, almost directed towards a younger, the younger generation?
No, not at all, actually. They're no different than our leaf chews. I know in the beginning you guys had concerns of how colorful our leaf chews were, but we had no issues with them being on the market, and all of our market is always intended for a 21 and adult older audience.
So are these accurate pictures of your products?
Ours are not as bright as the chocolate. I'm not for sure, maybe the resolution and the camera came through bright or something, but it's a basic white chocolate with basic swirls in it. They're a pale blue. I don't think the end product is actually very bright at all. Actually, I don't think the K-Pops are as bright as the leaf chews are right now that are on the market.
So no sprinkles and all that stuff?
I'm so sorry, say that again.
No sprinkles and all that stuff?
Well, I think that would be limiting the product, but yeah, we could not do sprinkles if you guys don't want to.
I think his question was, there are 3 photographs on here. One of them show pretty bright chocolate with lines. Some look like more rainbow, and then there's one of like a bouquet with all sprinkles on the top. So I guess he was asking if your real product was going to be similar to these pictures.
I think the chef wanted the option to be able to have a variety But if one of those pictures is not okay with the board, then I will just tell her that she can't make that product. I mean, if there's one of those pictures that you guys don't like with the sprinkles or something on there, just let me know and I will modify it. But I think the intention was to be able to have a variety.
Mr. Chairman,
same thing with flavors. I think the flavors was the same thing. We wanted to be able to.
Okay, Mr. Jaime.
You know, I mean, it looks like a boutique chocolate factory, actually. I mean, these look really nice. But I do think there needs to be delegation of the motion that the police enforcement takes a look at them and make sure that they're not too colorful and appealing towards children. Thank you.
So you're going to make that amendment to the motion to add a delegation that enforcement look at this and make sure it's not attractive to children?
Yes, sir.
Okay, is there a second to that amendment?
I'll second that.
Okay. Is there any discussion around the amendment?
I just have one. How long does that take?
Well, actually, if I could bump in front of you, Justin.
No, Ms. Wilson, no. We had a second, and I believe Mr. Miller wanted in, and we'll leave it with the board.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
And you're right.
Mr. Miller
did want in. Sorry if I wasn't loud enough. So I understand
I heard
the concern. Okay. I understand the concern that some of the board members may have, but as an industry member and a retailer, I will tell you that we have gummies and hard candies, and, you know, as long as the manufacturer follows the packaging requirements and the retailer packages it properly when it leaves the store, I don't think the colors and appearance are as important as we thought they were 2 years ago, because, fact be told, they're packaged in opaque packaging. They can't be seen, right? So it's not going to be appealing to a kid if they can't see it, or someone under 21 because they can't come into the facility. So I just wanted to throw that out there because, you know, we did put a pretty big emphasis on it a couple of years ago, but it hasn't been a problem for the industry, and I don't see it being a problem as long as we keep enforcing the packaging requirements.
Are there any other
Mr. Chair?
comments from the board member?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a comment.
Mr. Schulte and then Ms. Wilson.
Okay.
As well, Mr. Jaime.
I actually share Mr. Jaime's concerns, and that's why I'd wanted to speak to it initially also. And I came down on the side of, well, they are kind of colorful and attractive looking, but if the packaging is, you know, child resistant, I think I could live with it. So that I was kind of falling on that side of the argument.
Hey, Bruce, this is Justin. As far as the colors, you guys have seen the leaf chews. They are not as colorful and as bright as the leaf chews. I can tell you that right now. I see them both side by side. I see the leaf chews sitting right next to them. They are not as colorful as the leaf chews that are currently on the market.
Okay.
Okay, Ms. Wilson and then Mr. Jaime.
I just wanted the board to recall that it changed the opaqueness requirements, that technically, you know, if it goes in a bag of the customer and it can't be seen through, that's going to accomplish your aim, or at least not raise an enforcement concern. But if someone took that package out of the customer's bag, there's a chance it may not be opaque.
Okay, Mr. Jaime.
Fair point.
Yes, and that was my concern is, you know, if we're talking about the packaging, I mean, that has to be a regulation change if we're not overly concerned with the appearance of the product. You know, a little while ago we were talking about the distance from schools, and people were saying, board members included, that it's not up to us to interpret, you know, what the regulation says. You have to follow the regulation. And now that this, you know, with this product, now we want to, you know, use our interpretation versus what's actually written in regulation. So once again, I just think it needs to be a delegation.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on the motion to amend the main motion to add a delegation on enforcement reviewing the colors? Okay, Mr. Jaime.
Yes.
Mr. Schulte,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
No.
Mr. DeShock,
Yes.
okay, and I'm a no. That motion to amend the original approval to add a delegation passes on 3-2. So the motion before us now is to approve the product, new product, Cake Pops, I believe is the name, Galaxy Cake Pops, for license 10082 Einstein Labs. Is there any more questions from the board to the applicant?
Yeah, the applicant has a question.
Yeah, I have a question too.
Ms. Wilson.
I just want to, I got bumped off the call, so I apologize for interrupting before. I thought that this had already been voted on because I got bumped off the call. But through the chair, for Mr. Jaime's amendment, can that be satisfied when Einstein sends the product before it goes to the shelves to enforcement for enforcement spreadsheet? Can it be done in that manner? Because then I think it would be pretty efficient.
Mr. Klinkert.
Could you please have her repeat that? Thank you.
Sure. So enforcement, through the chair, enforcement compiles all of the actual products that, go to the shelf, and they get a picture of that product before it goes to the shelf with the packaging from the marijuana producer. So I was wondering if we could just kind of loop Lieutenant Jaime's amendment in with that process, so it's just one easy thing.
I think it can. I just want to make sure it's clear that the wishes of the board, if this is how they pass it, that however the process is, that enforcement know that they are to look at it and approve it. How that mechanic works, I don't have a preference.
Well, that's, I guess, my concern is expiration dates on Cake Pops that, we potentially wanted to make this week. So if we can't make them, I just need to know turnaround time on, so I don't have stuff spoiling. And that was my concern is, like, what is that process? Since you guys are making up a new process, what is that process?
This is Jaime real fast. It's not a new process, first of all. It's a process that this board has been doing since at least I've been on it. I would like to make this as expeditious as possible. All right, sir, hold on. And I would like to make this process as expedited as possible for the licensee. So I think, we should be accommodating. I just think it needs to be done. So thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I had a couple of questions directly on the packaging. I believe Mr. Rowland stated that this was going to be individually packaged. In Section 4 of the proposed product packaging, it says packaging will consist of 1 to 10 single-serving spheres with up to 5 milligrams. And the packaging looks like you could put 10 of these pops in one bag or maybe one in the plastic tube. Could you explain to me exactly what the packaging is? Will these all be single packaging, like in the pink tube, or will you put 10 in a Mylar bag?
So we have the option, and that's how we wrote it up in the proposal there. Just like the leaf chews, we have the ability to put 1 or 10 single servings in a Mylar. I wanted the ability with the Cake Pops to be able to put 1 or 10 in a Mylar, or if it's just a single, then they'll go in those tubes, and we won't use the Mylar. But we wanted the option of either or.
Okay. And that's simply because you said, and when you said that these would be single servings, so that was my question. Ms. Wilson, I interrupted you.
Oh, I think that what Justin meant was that there was only going to be 5 milligrams in a Cake Pop. Not like there was going to be 2 servings in a Cake Pop, that only one serving was in a Cake Pop. But it was confusing the way it came out.
Yeah, sorry, that's exactly what I meant. Yep.
Okay. All right, any other questions? Okay, so on the amended motion, the motion is to approve the new product Galaxy Cake Pops for license 10082 Einstein Labs with delegation, the delegation being that enforcement would review the colors to be sure that it didn't violate our regulation related to making it attractive to persons under 21. So on that motion as amended, Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. DeShock,
Yes.
Mr. Jaime,
Yes.
Mr. Schulte,
Yes.
and I'm a yes, so thank you very much. We are now up to tab 44, Tundra Brewing LLC. Mr. Klinkart.
Thank you, sir. Number 44 Tundra Brewing. This is a product manufacturing facility. Requesting approval of one product attached as the MJ16. I believe this is a beverage flavoring. Back to you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody online from Tundra Brewing LLC?
Yes, sir. This is Brian Simpson, manager of the business, and I believe our beverage consultant Scott Meyer should be on also.
I am on. Scott Meyer,
Okay,
beverage consultant.
all right. Is there a motion from the board?
Sorry, I had to get unmuted there. Yeah, move to approve the new product for license number 23736, Tundra Brewing.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the new product of Tundra Brewing. Is there any questions from the board for the applicant?
I have one question.
Mr. Schulte.
Yeah, so this is a 2-ounce bottle. So basically it's a shot, a single shot almost of 5 milligrams. Is that correct?
It's
Mr. Simpson?
It's 2 shots in one bottle.
Oh, I see that. Okay, all right. 2-ounce bottle, but 10 milligrams of THC.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, thanks. That's my question. We'd had another product in front of us not too long ago where it was a very, very small quantity, but a 50 milligram bottle, and that raised some questions, but yours doesn't appear to fall into that category. So, okay, I have no more questions. Thanks.
And it does say bottles are marked at the halfway point on the label to indicate the 5 milligram dose.
Yes, I see. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I had a question of the applicant and maybe of the attorney, and maybe Ms. Sawyer, who says we are consistently inconsistent, which is true. When we approve a product, let's say gummies, and they do some gummies that are lemon flavored and some gummies that are blueberry flavored, the gummy is produced and is exactly the same product, and we add a different flavor. But this appears to me to be enough that the spearmint splash is spring water, spearmint, honey, citric acid. The hibiscus splash is purified spring water, hibiscus tea, honey, yeast extract, olive oil. Some of the product ingredients are the same. Some appear to be enough different. I guess I wanted to ask the attorney or the board. This is not the same ingredients adding a lemon flavor, blueberry flavor. This is actually producing a flavor, hibiscus splash, with different products than Poncho's Punch Splash. And then, in addition, they're actually, with the label or the button at the top of the cap, would indicate a strain. And that doesn't appear on the label, although the label, it certainly looks like Splash and something else was certainly different. So the question I have is, are we looking at one product with different flavors? Or are we really reviewing 5 products or 6 products that may be from different strains of the marijuana, enough that even though they're all THC distillate, they seem to indicate that if they have purple, orange, or green sticker applied to the cap, that the source of that distillate is sativa or hybrid-based distillate or something else. So that's a question for the board to sort of help me understand. Are we really approving a single product with different flavorings, or are we really looking at 5 separate products?
Through the chairs is Jaime. I think we're looking at 5 separate products, and they should be separated out. I think it'd be easy fix, but just try to be a little more consistent with what we've done over the last at least 4 meetings, then I think we should separate them out, and hopefully wouldn't be too erroneous on the licensee.
Okay. Any other comments from the board?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Schulte.
Okay, my recollection may be slightly flawed. It's been a weird year, but I actually thought we were leaning more towards treating flavors as just variations on a theme, so to speak. My question is, did we put any clarification of that issue out on the FAQs on the website? I guess that'd be a question for the director.
Mr. Klinkert.
You know, I'm going to have to look and see. I know that I recall from my very first meeting when I met all of you that there was discussions about that and where that goes. I don't recall, at least in my tenure, posting something to that effect. I know it's on my list on my board of partly trying to create a product subgroup or working group, that these are exactly the sort of things that might help the board in the long run have some guidelines for this. So to answer your question, is I will have to look at that and get back to you to see if there's anything there.
Okay, thanks. And Mr. Chairman, at the risk of contradicting something I may have said in a previous meeting, I would sort of lean towards approving, if the only difference is an artificial flavoring additive, I'd be inclined to approve it as one product with multiple variations, since I don't think there's a public health question or a dosing question or a packaging question. It's really more just a flavoring. But again, I think if we're gonna go that way, or go the other way, as Mr. Jaime suggested, it would be helpful to everybody involved to kind of codify that and put it out at least as an FAQ so that we're all clear.
Okay. Mr. Miller. Mr. Miller.
You're right. We're consistently inconsistent, but I'm pretty positive the last time we discussed it, we were leaning towards approving these one product if all it had was like flavoring variations. I think we were trying to maybe make it easier on everybody else, but since we can't seem to remember, it doesn't seem to make it easier. But that's what I recall, and I would support approving one product with different flavors. That's where I'm at.
Okay.
Rarity.
I guess, I certainly, I know that we have done that with, say, gummies or some of the hard candies that are multi-flavored, and so they package maybe, 2 blueberry, 2 strawberry, 2 whatever in each, package, or maybe say they have variation, but, these actually have different names. They have the Spearmint Splash, they have the Hibiscus Splash, they have Poncho's Punch Splash, and I don't want to necessarily hold this up, and then they have 3 different color caps that are supposed to talk about whether it's dominant strain is indica, sativa, or hybrid, and I didn't see that sort of on the label. So I'm having some real troubles with this. Maybe Brian Simpson, can you sort of walk me through that a little bit?
Yes. The labels on the top of the cap, it's not on the label of the bottle for the strain, because it would be too. We don't know when the oil comes in. If you have indica and not sativa, you can run the batch, but the customer knows, the retailer knows, the bud tenders know that that's the strain. But it's still the same distillate oil. It's not a specific difference in an ingredient. A lot of manufacturers it'll all be the same oil. And because we're going to do the distillate, then we'll put some terpene back in to give it that effect. And was that the question that you had primarily?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's to me, when I go in to pick up a product, if there's some kind of code on there with the color of the cap or the color of the label, it ought to be clear that I know what that is as a consumer. And then you have different labels. So you have the hibiscus and you have the spearmint, and they're pretty distinctive labels. So if I go in to buy hibiscus and then I have to determine whether it's a green, orange, or purple cap to tell me what might be the strain, I'm not sure that that's necessarily as consumer friendly. I understand what you're trying to do, which is to distinguish, and people may only want purple bottles, and if the retailer doesn't have any, they may not buy it. I don't know. But it looks to me like there's 5 separate products that might have 3 variations to each product, which I remember my statistical analyses, that's like 15 different combinations that could possibly come out to a consumer. It just sort of boggles the mind a little bit, but I apparently don't have equal concern among the board members, so I will drop it. But please, anything that you can do to simplify this process would be helpful. Are there any other questions to the applicants from the board?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if this is a question exactly, but I was going to offer a suggestion.
Mr. Schulte.
Since this is the last product that we're going to talk about today, I think.
Yep.
And I kind of like to address this in more detail. So my suggestion was going to be that we maybe table this to tomorrow morning, and I would offer to work on some sort of resolution that would, in an attempt to clarify a position on this kind of product. Whether we all agree on it and adopt it is another question. But I would like to take the opportunity overnight to work on some language like that. If we agree on it, great. We put it up on the website as an FAQ, and then this licensee and those that come after have some guidance. And if we don't, well, we've only lost a little bit of time.
Mr. Simpson,
Mr. Chair?
Is that okay? Ms. Wilson.
Okay. I'm sorry to interrupt. I was just going to let you know that while you were all talking, I was reviewing statute and regulation, and unfortunately they don't give us a lot of assistance with this question, so it really is within your discretion.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Simpson, is Ms. Sawyer.
Yes, I'm sorry. This is Jane. The other thing to think about is that when people submit, so this application, as you see it, is $250. If they were to submit it in 5 different products, that would be $250 for each product. That's just another thing to consider when you're talking about this, and to be consistent for the public, because some licensees, and I mean licensees, some pay more than others because of this inconsistency, and I'm just letting you know.
I understand that. I think at other times when we have split products up, we have waived that fee. So, Mr. Jaime.
Now that's what I was going to ask. And also, if they submit one MJ16 with 15 different products, I mean, still only a $250 fee, correct?
Correct. This is one MJ16. And correct, you have delegated that we don't charge for the extra applications, but sometimes People just submit them that way, separated, because they know they're going to have this issue, for lack of a better word, and they already pay those fees, and nothing about the fees comes up when they get reviewed because they're already separated. Nobody's having any extra questions, you know, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, thank you. Now, Mr. Simpson, do you have a problem with calling in at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning?
No, sir.
Okay. Is there any objection to Mr. Schulte's suggestion that we hold off and bring this tab back up first thing tomorrow morning? Okay, I do not hear any objection from any board member, and with the concurrence of the applicant. And we appreciate, Mr. Simpson, you being able to be on tomorrow morning, and we will see what Mr. Schulte brings forward to us in the morning. So with that, we will basically move tab 44 to tomorrow morning. Tabs 45 and 46, we changed on the agenda to skip over. And so we will address this tab, and then we will move to tab 47, which is regulation tracking sheet, and go on from there when we reconvene at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. So is there any other comments or questions from any board members before we recess until tomorrow morning? Okay, hearing none. Appreciate this is a lot of work. We're actually through, except for this last one, all of the applications. So we are on to regulations and those issues in the morning, absent tab 44. So we've done some good work and maybe have some really good discussions tomorrow morning. With that, we will recess the, I'll call the Marijuana Control Board meeting until 9 o'clock on the morning of August 20. With that, we will talk to you all tomorrow and have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You bet.